This is S.T.A.R.S Officer Rebecca Chambers, and you're listening to Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast.
What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. And in today's episode, I have a very special guest, a content creator such as myself. He is known as Hey Deva, but he's also known as Rick. What's going on, man?
Hey, Ant, how's it going, man? Thank you for having me on your channel. This is a really big deal for me, and it's this is a big honor for me. I've been a big fan of your channel, and I don't know what else to say, but thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, man. No, this is really cool. And we were talking in the chat on one of the streams, and just I was like, you know what, man, we should really try to do something, because I thought that there's such a wide variety of content creators on YouTube, and there's always different topics and stuff, but you are in that kind of survival horror lane, definitely, most definitely. And when I saw the following that you had and everything, I was like, I really want to have this guy on, because I thought what you did was, I was looking at all the videos, and I was like, man, this guy definitely knows what his audience wants, and obviously what he wants to do on this YouTube thing.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that, but I mean, man, it's really like a hit or miss when it comes to trying to make content. It's really tough, because stuff that you used to do like a year before that was working, sometimes it just doesn't work now.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on with it. Maybe it's just a video topic, or it's just, like for example, Resident Evil is pretty big right now, even though we're kind of off, because RE Village has been out for more than a year.
Right.
But I mean, with the new Netflix series and the last movie, Welcome to Raccoon City, I feel like a lot more exposure to Resident Evil has been out there. So, I mean, it's like letting other people see our channels, right? So
That's the
maybe
big
that
thing.
has to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like RE4 is like a big push, I think, for a lot of people, because people really get excited for these remakes, and I think like a lot of people really just want, they either want the remakes or they just want the current games. So I think there's different pockets of fans. One of the things I wanted to obviously ask you, though, is like going all the way back before the content creation, is how did you get into gaming just in general? And then I guess we can kind of lead that into how you got into Resident Evil and that kind of thing. But where did it all really start for you? Like which era, and was it like a family member? Was it just something you kind of fell into from a friend? Like what was it?
It was definitely a family member, and it started with the PS1 days, right? And it started with the OG Resident Evil 2.
Ah.
And yeah, so back then, how old was I? Like, let's just say, I'm gonna give my age away. So I'm like 8, 9 years old, right? And I remembered it was like, off school days and all that, like a vacation. And we had some of the older cousins come by the house, a lot of us, right? There were like, 8, 10 of us, right? And the oldest cousin would play Resident Evil 2. And I already had like the inklings of like, I loved horror movies, stuff like that. So when I saw him play Resident Evil 2 for the first time, it was it was good memories, man. Like, because everybody's getting into it. Like, who's this Leon character, where that he's playing, and then like, what's going on? Why is there zombies here? Who's that monster guy that's like following you around and all that? Like, see, like stuff like that. That's what really started it. So, and then like, he had to go back to his place, whatever, and I had my PS1, so I got a copy of Resident Evil 2. Yes, I know I was young, but like I had my copy of it, and like not realizing how difficult the controls were back then. Because remember, fixed camera angles, and like, the control is like you had to press a D-pad plus a square button just to move around, and you had to be the direction of the character. It's not based on on the camera, it's based on the character. So that was a little bit difficult for me to, learn for me back then. But man, yeah, it all started with Resident Evil 2. And I remembered back then that I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like every Saturday, and I would play through the whole first scenario or a scenario of Resident Evil 2, and I'll be done by like around 6:30 in the morning, right? And every Saturday I'll just keep doing that. So I've been a big fan for at least like more than 2 decades.
That's
So
great,
that's
man.
how.
That really, that's so cool that you have those memories of just like of constantly, playing something constantly, just because like, when you're younger and you're growing up and like you find little things to get obsessed with over and over again. And it's like, you have, and a lot of times the games that you have are, whether it's limited to your library, because it's not like we have like, when we're kids, we have like, besides like, video stores and stuff that we could rent out, there's only so much you can get at one time. But I think there is a charm to just playing something like over and over again, and then also having those connections to it. Because I think all of us, we share something in common where like we all kind of have some kind of childhood connection to, PlayStation, Nintendo 64, it could be before that NES, SNES, whatever era you come from. And then everyone comes from different eras of gaming, but then we all somehow find this thing called Resident Evil, and we all kind of find our common interests and stuff kind of in the middle there. And I think it's very interesting that once you start seeing, like, because Resident Evil 2 was really a big one for people. If people didn't play the first one, they definitely played the second one.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
So it was just such a big game, and it doesn't surprise me that RE2 is kind of like your gateway into that. Because, and what a great gateway that is, because that's just such a impactful game, one of the best sequels ever made. It's incredible. You know what I mean? How did you, like, when you started to kind of get into the PlayStation, did you just follow Resident Evil, and was it other survival horror stuff, or was it just like, did you kind of just stick with Resident Evil and you also had like your other, you were like me, you probably had Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, right? Like other ones that you were messing around with?
Yeah, it was mostly Resident Evil, right? Resident Evil 2. And then I try to stick with like, the horror games. Like I did dabble into Silent Hill, right? But obviously at that time I couldn't understand the story. I mean, even to this day I'm still like kind of jumbled with some of the stuff, right? Because there's different interpretations.
Absolutely.
And then I played Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I mean, it's not a horror game per se, but I mean, horror theme, gothic,
absolutely,
whatever.
Yeah, that's a great one.
The one I really got into besides Capcom Resident Evil games, Dino Crisis one now was Clock Tower 2.
Yeah, Clock Tower.
Yeah,
that was one I was late on. I played that way later. But that was one that I always heard about and I could never find, because people would talk about it and they're like, there was a certain era where like that was just one you couldn't find, and I had no way of playing it until like way later when, I found out how to emulate stuff and I was able to at least get it. But yeah, that's another one that like I was kind of late to getting into, you know what I mean? The Clock Tower always seemed to be creepy and kind of bugged out horror, like Silent Hill, like where it's really crazy, like it gets really, really nuts.
And that's the thing, like it's funny you mentioned it's like, yeah, it's bugged out horror. It's like it doesn't have the best graphics. And, you know what? Just a preface, I mean,
yeah,
talk about Clock Tower 2, right? Struggle Within, and I mean, if you guys check it out, I mean, the reviews for that game is terrible. Like everybody gave a negative review.
Really?
But there is a cult following for that game, and I feel like I'm part of that because, man, like I really, really got into it. The soundtrack, I mean, you can't say like, oh my gosh, it's a masterpiece. But the thing is, though, it works so well for that game, right? And it's creepy, and you got this little girl just following you with a knife. It's it's really, really scary for me at that time. It's like, a 9-10-year-old,
Sure.
Can you imagine? So, I mean, I know it's a video game, but I mean, I wouldn't want to be in that position where like, holy moly, we got this stalker kid trying to kill you,
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So, but yeah, Clock Tower 2, but then, I mentioned, I got into obviously Dino Crisis, right? The first one where it was still a little bit more horror, right? And then, but I'll be honest, I like the second one better, even though it's not horror whatsoever. It's more actiony, right? But it works so well for that particular.
It really does, man. There's less puzzles
yeah.
too. The puzzles are fine, but some of the DDK stuff and Dino Crisis 1 just gives me a headache still to this day. Puzzles are great, but holy shit, Dino Crisis took it to another level. They're like, yo, it's not so much like puzzles, but it's more like passcodes, and you have to get this for this door and this for that door, like more so than any Resident Evil I think I've ever played where it was that intricate. And then Dino Crisis 2 is like, no, we're an arcade shooter now. And and before we go into space, let's be an arcade shooter. And that's exactly what they did. But I agree. I kind of like Dino Crisis 2 more than 1, but I love 1. I don't want to get that twisted because I fucking love that game. That game is oh man, that was such a. You love Jurassic Park, you love Resident Evil, and then you play that game, and you're like, wow, this is like,
it together.
yeah, like it makes you wonder why it's been a little bit since they've, Exoprimal, is a mixed bag, right? People are like, what the hell? Like they just want we don't want a Dino Crisis remake, man. Us like, you know, us fans of Resident Evil, seeing all this success with Resident Evil and the RE engine, let's just see that Dino Crisis on there one more time, you know? That'd be so killer if they did that.
And you know what? It's Capcom knows that the fans want it. I mean, you know, going back to like let's say Resident Evil 3 remake. Remember in the subway station, if you guys check out like the top portion, like in the kind of ceiling, there's something called like Dino Bites, right? You know what I mean? Like a little like it's like they know. And then obviously, you know, when they showed the Exo Primal trailer, and then in the background, I was like, is that Regina? Like red hair? I was like, is that her?
Everyone
like,
thought it
no
was
way.
Regina. Everyone thought, like, you know, and then it's like we just got, you know, and they're doing like the closed beta thing, and they were putting that stuff out, but yeah, you know, I think it's like that era in gaming that we grew up in really doesn't exist anymore. You know, it's gone, and it's changed to kind of like a different wave of like, you know, remakes and, you know, reimaginings and just different vibes. Like that wasn't a thing really back then. And then you had Resident Evil remake, you know, in 2002, that was like the real standout. And even back then I was really confused. I was like, why does it look the same in the back? Not the same, but like it was like the dining room. Like it was just called Resident Evil. I didn't get it when I was younger, walking into a store having no reference of like that this game was actually being remade from the ground up. But then when you popped it in and it scared the shit out of you, you're like, holy shit, this is like the real deal. And then gaming just, you know, obviously took off from, you know, the GameCube, PS2, Xbox era onward, and then it completely changed. And you know, so I think we kind of have a connection to that. I think a lot of times why we play old games and we talk about lore and even the new stuff and we still follow it is because there's always remnants of, I think, the past in there that we remember that kind of brings back nostalgia, but also just like really connects us to our fans and the people in our comments that love discussing about this stuff all the time, you know?
Yeah, you know what? You hit a pretty good point there. Like you mentioned, it's just a different vibe, right? Back then. And you know what? I feel like the vibe was a little bit different, right? I could just be seeing this through like, you know, like, oh my gosh, it's like best memories ever, right? Like, you know, Rainbow Glasses, right?
Right.
But I think the reason it felt a bit more organic in a way is because like when a game was really, really good, it's usually through like, you know, it spreads through word of mouth, right? You know, we didn't have like the access of the internet or Instagram or Twitter like that, you know? Like then if the game was really, really good, then your community around you, like your neighbors or your like group of friends or your friends, whatever, they would tell you like, holy moly, hey, this game is great. You guys need to check it out. And everybody's imaginations will go crazy, right? Like I remember back then and we were playing Resident Evil 2, like me and my little group of friends, right? Like we were talking about like some of the lore, like who's like, you know, who's Chris Redfield? Because remember, like I started with 2. So we're thinking like, who's this Chris character? Because I didn't have Resident Evil 1 available for me. I didn't have like back then. Remember the strategy guide? You know, I'm giving my age away again. Like, you know, back then strategy guide. I didn't have that access to be like, okay, who's this Chris Redfield guy? Like, because clearly he's very important because the other protagonist Claire is looking for him, right? So like stuff like that. I think that's what made it like the vibe really, really nice, and is like I said, is much more organic. You know, that's why. It just feels really, really nice. I mean, don't get me wrong. Today, like the easy access of like information. I mean, I think it helps with the hype. I think it helps the hype up like things really, really quick. The only problem is it dies out really quick as well.
That's a really good point right there, right? Like how quick it builds up and how fast it breaks down, and then like people like us, we're content creators, so we're kind of like we're free promotion basically for these games, right? So it's like, you know, we're hyping it up. We're part of that wave. And so it's very interesting, because it's like it can really die as fast as it climbs with some of the hype stuff, right? And I think that's really an interesting point, because there is always kind of like waves, peaks and valleys of especially Resident Evil and survival horror. And I think that we've seen that firsthand through different eras of the console gens with these franchises, and how certain generations were better than others with these titles, right? And I think hopefully, you know, with the recent boom of stuff being, you know, Resident Evil Village, you know, how did you feel about the DLC announcement that we recently got at the Capcom event? Because this is something where now, we had a whole year, and obviously I know that you were doing a bunch of content on Village. So after a year
Yeah.
of kind of waiting, people not knowing what was going on, there's a lot of uncertainty. They finally announced it saying, hey guys, it's finally coming out. What was your initial reaction? And I guess also you can kind of go into how you felt about Village, because I guess that would go into your excitement about the DLC, because some people are like, I just want RE4, but some people are like, no, I want both, so where do you fall in that?
How about like, okay, first of all, I was a little surprised. I think they announced RE4 remake before the Village
Yes.
DLC.
Yep.
I was I was a little surprised with that, because you think like, let's get through Village first, then RE4.
That was my thought. So that's what I said in my video. I was like, damn, like I thought that they were at least going to do that first and finish it off.
Yeah.
And then they didn't do
make
that.
sense.
But no,
But-
they're like, no, we're just going to do it in the fall, and then bam, next quarter, put out RE4. But what were you going to say?
Okay, so how about, all right, let's go ahead and start with Village as a game as a whole, right? I'm
Absolutely.
not trying to consider like, the DLC, what I know about it, right? So forget about that.
Right.
I like the game. Like, obviously, Resident Evil, like, I have a bias to it, but so I had to play through it several times, countless times, actually. So, and to be honest, it's a good game. It's a really, really good game. I think it's a mixed bag, right? Because, for example, before Village actually got released, right? Like the biggest promotion, who was it? We all know who. Like
It was
who
Lady
they
D.
really highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, right. And I felt that like the way they portioned out the game for like obviously we're talking about spoilers here, so for people who haven't played
Right.
Village,
Go past it
So-
the next timestamp if you don't want to hear. Yeah,
Timestamp.
yeah.
Exactly. So we play in Lady D's section first, right? And you think after all the trailers, you think that she'd be like this arching like a villain that like, hey, she'll be around for the whole game. No, she was the first, portion of the game, her castle, whatever, and like her daughters, and just like that was done. I was like, wait a minute, that was it? I mean, don't get me wrong, that was one of my favorite parts of the game, to be honest.
Me too.
Right?
I wish it was
And
longer,
Lady D.
man. I was like,
Yeah, I wish
damn,
it
I
was
wanted to
longer.
explore more. Like, you see Salazar's castle, and you're like, what?
The castle felt smaller than what it actually looked like from the outside.
Yes.
And then but the thing is though, what I noticed, every moment that you get with Lady D or the daughters or whatever, like it was great, I mean, and that's the thing, but I thought like from the trailers and whatnot, and from what like the information we were getting, that she was going to be more like the Mr. X kind of stalker kind of, like, I mean,
Yeah.
she was to a portion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she did her thing, but I thought she'd do a little bit more this time around, because they did a great thing with Mr. X. They set the foundation for what a really, really good, stalker monster, like was going to be like in future Resident Evil games. All they had to do was just build on top of that, right?
Absolutely.
So I seriously thought like, hey, we fight Lady D in one portion of the castle, and then you hurt her, and then she gets, a little bit more anger, and then she starts running a little bit more faster, and then like stuff like that, right? That's what my expectation was. And then I did cover this in one of my videos, like talking about Lady D, and I was just surprised how quick it was done. Like for example, from one transformation from her regular humanoid form to
Right.
like her big dragon form, I felt like there needed to be like a middle kind of mutation, maybe like kind of something in between, because it just felt like a little rush, right? And I understand that, like, what Resident Evil Village was trying to do was kind of like trying to cater through like a wide variety of
Definitely.
horror theme
Yeah.
genre. Like the best comparison I could think of is like a carnival, right? Like the whole thing is it's a carnival, whatever, but there's different sections of it. Like, oh, okay, I like this portion better, right? And speaking of which, my favorite section was Beneviento.
Right.
Like, I like that, because even though like there was no like action-y kind of stuff, right? Like you literally had your equipment taken from you. Everything is really slow paced, and you kind of like you immerse yourself in that environment. It's really PT like, right?
Right. That's like the whole house is a puzzle all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the one part about it I did like. I obviously expressed a lot of disinterest when it came out, because people thought I was going to react differently than I did. But I understand why people liked it. I still get it, and I understand that like the imagery in there was cool, but I still think that was very short lived. It was one of those things where like I wish it was longer, Yeah, the baby
Yeah.
part's cool, but I wish that fight upstairs was a little bit
Longer.
redefined. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like just looking through, because I mean, while making my videos right now, like I was able to put like like a little mod, whatever. You could go through walls, right, and just see like what like
Just
the
to
actual
see it.
locations
Yeah.
are. Yeah, and I feel like they could have used a little bit more of the house too. Think about it. I mean, it's not like the castle of Lady D. I mean, it's not gonna be grand or anything. But at the same time, I mean, you wish you could have at least explored the house a little bit more, and maybe even like I mean, fight Angie per se. You know what I mean? A little bit more throughout the house. I don't know, but like I said, like same with Lady D. Just when things were starting to get really, really good, it ends. Then you start all over again. Just
Yeah.
when things were starting to get a little like really, really good with Donna, it ends. And then you're switched to Moreau. That's a different taste of like survival horror, right? This is kind of like the whole, you know, was it Merman, kind of, situation going on, the grotesque look of Moreau. I mean, me personally, like, I didn't like Moreau's section at first the most
Right.
out of, but then you move on to Heisenberg, and I guess he was really the big deal in that like universe because they say I think the Duke even mentioned that he was the most powerful out of the four lords, right?
Right.
And it's true. I mean, he's Magneto, literally.
Yeah,
He's
if you
Magneto.
see what he's coming up with in that factory, you're like, yo, this is pretty insane. You know,
Yeah, he's
yeah, that was the enemies there are definitely are very, they're definitely different than what you fight in the first portions of the game. You know what I mean? You're going into all like, the mechanical and the propeller man and like all this crap,
Mhm.
that's like a lot more intense as far as like trying to kill them. But
Mhm.
also like the factory, like some people don't like the factory, some people like it. I actually didn't mind it that much replaying it like
Mhm.
over and over again. I didn't, once you kind of know where to go, it can be a
Mhm.
little confusing.
Mhm.
But it wasn't that bad. But I agree. I feel like a lot of that stuff in Village was very short lived. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But it was like the action elements were very well done, and like the gameplay it felt really smooth. They did a really good
Yeah.
job with that.
And
They just
you know what? Here's another thing too. Like, I mean, like you said, like the factory portion, like going through my first playthrough, I didn't like it, but then playing through it over and over again, and actually like paying attention to the smaller details, they did a really, really good job of it. Like, I mean, they try to make it as creepy as possible. I mean, there's a section like, towards the end of that gameplay in the factory where like you remember like when the power was shut off, whatever, and
yeah,
everything
yeah,
was a little bit more dark. I
right.
mean, it looked really, really good. And then, I mean, just when things were starting to get a little bit creepier, I mean, like I said, I lean more to the slower, creepier things.
Definitely.
You fight Heisenberg, and then we all know what happens with Heisenberg. I mean, he becomes like this mecha,
Yeah,
giganto
and you got to use
robot.
this like vehicle that Chris made, this like tank to shoot this thing. It's just ridiculous. That fight definitely is it's a lot more annoying, especially on the harder modes. Every time, you know what I mean? Yeah, that one never really kind of, I don't know, that just doesn't really strike me as memorable either. It kind of reminds me of like a Simmons boss fight where it's like a whole bunch of nothing. It's like a bunch of blobs that you're just fighting, whether it's a dinosaur or a machine monster. You know what I mean? I'm like, damn, that would have been cool if Heisenberg was like, I don't know, maybe we had more fighting him with his hammer and his his powers. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, maybe they
Yeah,
could have added more to that before transforming him into his final form. I don't know. This is just stuff that you kind of play back a year later, and you're like, this is just what us fans would have wanted to see differently. You know what I mean? We're not trying to nitpick the damn thing. Obviously, we all know our opinions on it, but
yeah.
I think it's different than it's definitely a different vibe. I can say that like I think with Seven, I like Seven more than Village because it at least has more of that slower nature to it.
Mhm.
Even though I don't really like the Bakers as much as most people,
Yeah.
but I still like Seven more than Village. Now I could say that, but I'm still looking forward to the DLC. But I mean, how did you feel when you finished Village? Did you go back to it a lot other than content, or were you just like, eh?
Oh, no, I did. Like, actually, I did. Like I said, like I really liked the game. I mean, it was a good game, and like I said, I mean, I think the whole theme with Village and the bosses is like when things were starting to get good, it ends.
Yeah.
Same principle with Heisenberg, right? Like you just see Heisenberg, like you're about to confront him, right? Next thing you know, he just becomes this giganto biomechanical monster thing. It's done.
Yeah.
It's like, but I understand. But the whole game is like, is great. You know what I mean? I liked it, and they all have their backstories. You know, I mean, if you read the files and all that, like and like, each one has their own motives, right? Like we had like Lady D. She's a little bit insecure. She wants to be the favorite child, right? And then obviously that going with the Heisenberg, and because he's a little bit more favorable, because power wise, right? Maybe Mother Miranda like favors him, maybe we don't know that. But then you got Heisenberg, who doesn't really like Mother Miranda, and like little family dynamics between the antagonists. And then, but what I really appreciated though was that, and I remember they did mention this, is that they really wanted to work on Ethan's character,
Right.
this time around. Yeah, like because I remember there was a little meme back then for RE7, was that like Ethan was just literally a walking camera. And like, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit backstory to him, right? But this time around, I feel like they did a, really good way of portraying his character. Like, father would do anything to save his daughter, right?
Sure.
Like stuff like that. And then, what else did I like? I like the tie-in with Mother Miranda and Oswald E. Spencer. Like, kind of like, just connect Ethan's universe of Resident Evil to the main line.
Sure.
Like, I mean, even though we know Chris is there, but like, it's going back all the way. Like, you imagine, like, okay, Mother Miranda was a kind of influence for one of the main baddies for the whole Resident Evil franchise this whole time. You
Right.
get what I mean?
Yeah, it was cool. I just wish, like, I mean, well, I didn't think it was as cool, but it was cool that they tied something back, but it was disappointing with how they did it with just like a file. And then Chris is like, oh, this just happened. And it's like, Spencer, like what? And it's like, I just felt like, I guess, yeah, how else would have done it? But like, I think my problem with it is I didn't like Ethan in Village. I didn't, our opinions obviously vary, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Because that's the point. That's why I like getting people on here with different opinions, because people are like, they see that I can, like, it's fine, we can have a discussion if we don't feel the same way about a particular game, right? But I do like, a lot of things about Village that they did really well. I just thought that, like, they really did Chris Redfield dirty. I wish they really did more for him in that game. I felt like he was very underwritten and undertreated, really. And I think maybe that's what, because I like Chris, some people don't like Chris as much, right? Some people like other characters. Maybe they didn't care, but I kind of cared a little bit in that. Not a little bit, actually a lot. So that's why when I saw the DLC, it was like a little bit different. I was like, okay, they're just trying to wrap up this, whatever this story is. But but look, you liked Village, that's fine. But did you, when you were like thinking of stuff with the DLC, did you have an idea of what that DLC was going to be? Because a lot of people had a lot of theories, and they thought it was going to be more of the castle with Lady D. They thought it was going to be Chris Redfield, more stuff. So did you have any kind of like theories or discussions on that, like what you thought could follow that story?
Actually, I did. And you know what? Like, man, this is me, like, patting myself in the back, but like, I mean, because I had a theory, and I told my wife this. I was like, she's not really that into like Resident Evil, but like,
Sure.
I like to share the stuff that I cover, right? And I was like, all right, because remember, at the end of Resident Evil Village, I'm talking about like post credits, right? We get that cutscene with Rose, right? And there's that hint, like, who is that one guy walking towards the car
Walking in the
when they're
distance,
driving?
yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, some people were like, speculating it was Ethan. And when people actually zoomed in on it, it was his character model. But it doesn't mean that it was actually Ethan.
Right.
They probably just used his character model. But I was like, okay, we know at this time Rose is literally, as they said, like Evelyn, right? But like, I guess a good Evelyn-ish, kind of like, if you really think about it. I mean, okay, I need to break this down so people understand, right? Like, so we have Mother Miranda. She wanted her daughter back, right? She worked with a Cadeau parasite, and in the mold were megamycete, right? And then she gave a portion of her DNA of her daughter's dead, DNA of her dead daughter, whatever. She gave it to the connections with the mold, hence made it with Evelyn, right? And that same mold infected Ethan and Mia. And then they end up giving, obviously they have a child, right? So even Mother Miranda said, like, okay, well, Rose is literally Evelyn, like, I guess, like, perfected, right? Pretty much.
Like the perfect vessel, right?
Perfect vessel, because, like, she's not unstable, right? I mean, clearly we know she's at least with it, I mean, she's not bad or anything. She's not out there just like, oh, family, family, family. I'm just gonna infect everybody, right? So so now what we know, I told my wife, I was like, you know what's gonna happen? She's gonna probably have like a little like flashback, or she's gonna like go through like somebody who's infected with a megamycete or the mold, and somehow, because remember they mentioned this is like a hive. The megamycete is like a hive that
Yes.
holds in all the information, all memories, right? If everybody's been infected with it, so somehow I know they're gonna like she's gonna use her whatever power she has. She's gonna go delve into that. And lo and behold, like she from the trailer, from what we've seen,
Yep.
she's holding like this crystal thing. I don't know, maybe, or like there's a cadeau or whatever, or part of the
It's in
megamycete.
that
She
lab.
goes into that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, well, all right. I was like, oh my gosh, I got that correct. But then, I mean, I was wrong with 100 different things, right? But
Can't get
but yeah,
everything
like,
right, us fans. Sometimes we have so many so many thoughts that like we can,
mhm,
and like all the things we can kind of put in a conversation, but the stuff you get right, you're like, oh shit, because like I've done that in the past. Like you say things and you're like, damn, and then you're right,
mhm,
and you're like, oh shit, that was just a happy coincidence right there. But you can't always, you never know where they're gonna take it,
yeah,
and I think that's like for me, I'm like, you know what, when I saw that they were doing this with Rose, I was like,
mhm,
this, I'm happy they're at least wrapping up this
mhm.
story. So whatever 9 is can just be, whatever it wants to be. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Wait, can
yeah,
I touch on that? I'm really confused because on this, because I remember there was I was following an interview, right, and like some articles about it, and they said like Ethan's storyline and this particular portion of Resident Evil and the franchise, that this was supposed to be like a trilogy, right? You know how like the first main line, one, two, three, Leon and Chris, whatever, and Jill, whatever, and then you got the four, five, six, right? Like
yeah,
over the shoulder,
absolutely.
and
There's
now we
different
got this like
eras. Yeah,
in this particular area, we're talking about like Ethan, Mold, and all that. I seriously thought that ending for Village was a kind of like a precursor for 9 and Rose's story for that game. Maybe it is. Maybe this DLC is literally just like a little kind of like an appetizer for the actual main game for Resident Evil 9, right? So I was like, I was a little surprised that they actually went with that storyline with Rose. I seriously thought we were gonna delve into Chris with this
yeah,
one, because remember by the end of Village 2, remember like when they were in the helicopter, one of the BSA agents, they were actually a bioweapon,
yes. And we don't know what
and
happened with that, right? Like, how did the
exactly,
BSA get, infiltrated by this? What happened? Because it used to be against all this stuff, and
mm,
Chris used to be ahead of all this stuff. So yeah, there's
yeah,
a lot of stuff I wish that they tapped in with that and the DLC. That's why when I saw it, I was
mm,
like, okay, all the other stuff with the DLC, like the Rose stuff, I'll definitely play it. I'll talk about it. I'll review
mm,
it. I'll probably have
mm,
fun with it. But I think
mm,
from a story perspective, it doesn't do too much for me. Where
yeah,
I think if they did like fill in like the BSAA stuff with Chris, like that would have made me a little bit more satisfied as a fan.
mm,
But
yeah.
that's just my opinion.
But here's the thing, like it's funny, like the way Chris was portrayed in Resident Evil Village, or maybe even like in what do you call it, and starting from Resident Evil 7, because Chris was never portrayed as a BSAA agent, right? Remember, even Resident Evil 7, he was kind of part of he was working with Blue Umbrella, and you're like, what? Like this
That's
is
what
kind
was
of
weird.
ironic.
Yeah, because they really tried to make
Yeah,
it like a soft reboot, right? Like they kind of made it like yeah, this is Chris, but like
not really
yeah,
Chris,
yeah. It's kind of like they were kind of testing it. Like you could tell they just didn't really. They didn't know. They didn't know if it was going to sell well. They didn't know if it was going to do well. They were just trying to put like, all right, here's a picture of the Spencer Mansion on the wall, and here's
Mm,
and then they redesigned Chris and they made him more, I guess,
like
somewhat,
kind of looks like.
yeah, kind of, yeah, somewhat like his continuation from RE6. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's right. Like he really dropped. He's not in the BSAA after 6. That's the last time we saw him with the BSAA, and then it was
Like
like
actually part of it,
part
like
of it.
like actually, like it's actually like he actually thinks good or highly of the BSAA,
And it's
because
like,
it's
what happened
not.
between the time? That's what we're thinking as fans. We see this from a distance, and then it's just like, again, it's kind of just there. And we wonder, will they ever go back to it? Because they do some things like that, or some characters where they just don't go back to it, and they just kind of forget about it, and that could
Yeah,
easily happen again. And I don't know, like I don't know what they're
yeah.
gonna do with that.
You know what? There's so many story points in Resident Evil at this point that they really do need to touch on and finish. Like, it's because I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's been going on for what, for more than 2 decades. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much storyline. I mean, I understand, but just going back with Chris and in Village, he doesn't. It doesn't seem like he really likes the BSAA. That's why he even had his own Hound Wolf Squad, right? Like
Yeah.
that was his new team. Like that's
Right.
his like own version of S.T.A.R.S, right? Like,
That's
hey, got like
exactly what it seemed like. It was like, because that was the one thing I was questioning. I was like, why? Like, what happened? Because this is kind of like,
Mhm.
this seems like like an out, like kind of like it's away from the main, stuff of what's going on. It's kind of like he assembled
Yeah.
this because he knows what he's going to be up against. He knows what he's going to fight, and it's very, yeah, it's a very different side, different style than we've seen, because it was more like, and here's my cat. It's more just like, yeah, it's worth fighting for, and then it's like, he's all gung ho about BSAA, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden it's gone. So it's interesting that that they may fill that in, and they might not fill it in. We don't know. We don't know where that's going to
But
go.
you know, and that's the thing. I feel like they really do need to like explore that storyline. I feel like that's going to be really, really important. Because think about it. You know that Chris, right? Chris, Jill, and several others, like they were the founding members of BSAA, right? This is a
Absolutely.
big deal. This is a really, really big deal. And for Chris to actually be kind of like on the opposite side of like kind of seeing the BSAA as something that's opposite of like what it's actually supposed to be doing, right? Because from what we're seeing, I mean, BSA came in and then he tells one of his guys from the Hound Wolf Squad, like, go check them out. Like, what are they doing here? Like, I guess BSAA is here. You know what I mean? It's like, shouldn't you know this? I mean, I thought you had connections there. I mean, a lot of Resident Evil characters have connections there. I mean, like Barry Byrne, right? Even though he's not an official member, he's
Right.
like kind of like consulting, whatever. And obviously Jill, I assume she's still part of it, right? Like, what is she really still part of it? I mean, that's gonna be kind of interesting if Chris is not really in a good terms with the BSAA, but then Jill is though. So what does that say? Is there something going on? Like,
Yeah.
what happened? Like, these are the questions, and why are they using BOWs? Like that's the whole point. What they're trying to get rid of, right?
Yeah, and then
BOWs.
all of a sudden you see this, and you're just like, okay, so are we gonna get, are we gonna see Jill finally in a current,
Mhm.
timeline game for the first time since
Farther,
five?
farther, farther.
Yeah,
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 farther.
yeah.
Because like how we have R3 remake, we saw what she looks like in the RE engine, but farther along in the
Exactly. That's
storyline.
what I'm saying. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, "Well, we got Jill in RE3," and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's like 1998 in the lore. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We want to see
Hmm.
what Jill's been up to. We saw her in recovery. In
Hmm.
we didn't see her, but she wrote a letter and to Barry, about her
Hmm.
recovering after RE5. We read that in Rev
Yeah.
2, and that was it. That was the only thing we heard of her in current timeline RE, that isn't the
Yeah.
remakes. And think it's like, I think it's a matter of time. Just bring it back, even if she's coming back for one last thing, because I know these
Hmm.
characters are getting older, and you got to start wrapping some of these things up eventually. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know that there's going to be that, like you said, that like what really like what happened there, and what can they fill in, because us fans kind of want to know. I mean, you spend all this time building up like this is what the BSAA is, and this is in the
Hmm.
story, and then it's kind of just like it kind of just gets ignored by the umbrella stuff, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
you bring it back in at the tail end of a village, or tail end of 8, and you're like, all right, well, is this going to go into 9? So yeah, it's a very head scratching moment. How do you feel about the like the third person stuff? Are you going to play that? Are you going to check it out?
Yeah. I'll definitely play it. I mean, to be honest, like I think the first person perspective does help in terms of like trying to make things a little bit more horror kind of feel to it. Obviously Donna Beneviento's portion, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's really up in your face. It's like it's really atmospheric, right? And you see this crazy baby creature coming towards you. Like you want something like that, like in first person. Like you really do appreciate, like, holy moly, this moment right here is definitely scary, right? Because it makes you feel like you're right in there,
Yeah.
experiencing a thing. Though in terms of like the over the shoulder kind of perspective, right? I That works with like obviously RE2 remake, that kind of style, a little bit more action heavy,
Yeah.
right? And obviously RE3 remake, definitely. I mean, can you imagine doing like like a dodge in RE3 remake, but in first person? You'd be like, whoa, like what just happened? I
Just
just flashed, and
get
next
all
thing you know, I'm
disoriented.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, whoa, like why am I on the side here now? Like, so like I think it's just a different style, right? And Me personally, I think that at this point, though Capcom has found some type of success, a really, really big success in this portion of the Resident Evil franchise, I do believe there really are like they're trying to experiment and see where like the main fan base is like, where they want to settle. It's like, are we just going to continue on the first person, or are we going to keep going back and forth, with over the old over the shoulder? So I feel like they're still experimenting, and but though they're not gonna change it drastically like they did from RE6, where it's just like bombastic Michael Bay kind of like explosions, to
Yeah.
RE7, where it's like slow paced PT style, Baker family and all that. Like I think they're just doing it just enough changes and experimentation that they want to have a good, solid ground. Like, okay, from this point on, we're gonna do it this way because clearly this way works
You're
for
right.
now.
It
Or
it did, right? Like it really brought in the newer fans, like the casual fans,
yes,
because there was a big boom in first person horror at the time, and I think that was
yes,
like a really interesting moment because people were like, "Damn!" and they saw what PT did, and then they had the demo
mm,
and the dummy
yeah,
finger, and they were riding the high off that hype, and it worked. I remember
mm,
streaming, and I remember like the most at the time, the most like I was getting, I don't even know what it was, but I remember I was streaming just on the PlayStation thing, and I was getting like so many views, probably the most views I ever got on a live stream up until the recent years. But I was getting so because people were like, try this, try that. It was like, you know, a whole experimenting, like what you can do for the dummy finger and like all this demo stuff. So it got people excited, and they had those
yeah,
updates and stuff. I think like the first person stuff definitely was there for the VR, for
mm,
sure. And then it kind of took it and ran with it. Now it's interesting because Resident Evil 4 remake is going to have the PSVR 2 support and it's going to be in third person. So do you think
mm.
that Resident Evil 9 could potentially drop with just both perspectives?
I think I think they would, because like I said, I mean they are experimenting on this. I mean they're doing it with Village, right? I mean now we have the over the shoulder and the first person, right? And clearly with the Rose DLC and whatnot,
And is
and
that
then we
only in
have
because like the Rose DLC? Sorry to interrupt you, but that's
yeah,
only in third person. They didn't say like, oh, this is in first person. They just said no. The
yeah,
Rose DLC is in third person. Like not a lot of people
yeah.
talked about that little thing that they said because that's like you can't play it in first person. I don't know if that's gonna like make or break it for some people. Most people play the remakes too, so they don't care. But like what
Yeah,
like that's interesting, right? That's a weird statement to make. Like it's
yeah,
only third
I
person.
think yeah, I think it's third person. I don't know why they decided to do it that way. I mean, clearly, I mean, from the looks of it, the only thing I could think of like why they would go with in that route is that maybe from that perspective, maybe they could play around with like Rosa's powers, kind of like where you could kind of see a little bit more
Yeah.
like around you. Because in the first person, yeah, you see what's immediately in front of you, but it's kind of confined, right? Like when remember, like when you're doing like, the way I think of it, like when I'm doing my editing in my videos or whatever, like there's certain moments or cutscenes that where the camera is like going like zooming in, right, and it grabs the attention of the viewer. It kind of makes it like really really honed in for that one particular moment
Yes.
and detail. But would you want that for something that like for Rose's power, who's like it looks like if she's working with a mold that's like sprouting everywhere, maybe it's even behind her, right, or something like around behind like her like in her surroundings or something like that. You want to see that. You want like so when you pan the camera around, you want to see everything quickly. So is that something maybe that's why? I mean, I could just be reaching here, but that's my reason why they went with that route. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe they'll add in like an update or a patch or whatever. They're like, okay, you can play Rose DLC
In
just the
first
first person.
person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a good point. I think that makes sense. Like designing it around that third person because they're trying to do something new, kind of like what they did with the first person stuff from
Mm,
7 and 8 where they had those certain things like you said where it's like just for that. And then what also to your point of experimentation, that's, like you said, maybe if they're just doing this in third person just to experiment again, and then maybe they have more of an idea with the RE4 remake because we don't have a date for the PSVR 2, but I'm assuming it's going to be out not this year, but maybe next year. I
yeah.
guess. We know what it looks like, but it's just one of those things where like I think that's going to be that like if the VR thing keeps going, and it seems to be working with their current state of the Resident Evil 4 VR doing very well. So I think that was their experiment for that, and then that kind of bled into the remake stuff. So yeah, it's very interesting to see where they could take, the future of RE, like where all this stuff is kind of leading to, right? Like, but I guess that kind of leads to like, how did you feel about the, obviously there's mercenaries, additional orders, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But how did you feel about Resident Evil 4 remake? That's like the big one, man. That's really what a lot of us have been talking about, making content on. We're trying to
Yeah.
gain as many new subscribers as we can and just try to
Yeah.
do really good content on this thing, coverage. Like, how did you feel about Resident Evil 4 remake? I'll give you the floor.
Okay. Just for disclosure and whatnot, like, at first I did not like Resident Evil 4. And the reason I'm talking about the, obviously the original.
Right.
And because not to me it's the greatest game, one of the greatest games of all time, but I did not like it just because when I was playing that game, I was in a really bad, part of my life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So when I play it, it's like it's kind of, so that's why I have a little bit of like kind of like mixed feelings about it. Like, it's a really, really good game, but then when I play and I listen to the music and it kind of brings me back to like, certain moments of my life, I'm like, man, it was rough. So it's kind of like I have that connection. But seeing this remake, I feel like it's kind of like, I don't want to sound like too cheesy, but like a, like new beginning in a way. It's kind of like, okay, let's get over whatever happened in the past, and like this is like play this new remake, reimagining,
And you have new
whatever you
memories
want to call
now,
it.
right? So
New
you'll
memories, yeah.
associate that with everything
With the
else,
new
and
memories.
that will just go along with your 2 remake memories and your 3 remake memories, and
Exactly.
all the content that you do will kind of be in that era of that game. That's how I look at it
Exactly.
too. Like, every era of a game is like a new era in the channel, where like I'm covering something new, or I'm talking about something new, and then like those conversations and those memories on like the live streams or crazy moments, it's all part of that, like that time frame. And it's like, there's always like an event like quality to when these things release, right? But Resident
Yeah.
Evil 4 remake, I think, is really a just from the looks of it. Obviously we didn't see like gameplay, but man, I
Yeah.
mean, that was just a really good depiction of like what we're gonna get into without giving away too much,
much away.
and it looks incredible, man.
But you know what? Here's the thing. Like, like I said, OG Resident Evil 4 is one of the greatest games of all time, right? And whatever, if I take away all my biases and whatever experiences, whatever, it's absolutely a stellar game. That's all I can say, right? It's amazing. So, like you said, like, I mean, we get into certain games and like, eras and whatnot, and like you associate certain things. Like me and you, I mean, we've been, big fans since late 90s, right? And we associate that portion with great memories. That's how I got into Resident Evil in the first place, right? But then, playing during that era with, Resident Evil 4, I mean, yeah, I didn't have a great experience, but I have to take in consideration too. A lot of people got into Resident Evil because of Resident Evil 4, right? And now in this era that we're gonna have a remake, and that's a whole new fan base of people who just like to play the remakes. You're gonna have an experience like, okay, it's like a new era, like it's gonna be new for me, right, too, because like I'm gonna associate it with a different like kind of, feel, or maybe like memories in the future or whatever, right? But man, I'm really excited for it. I feel like, this the way they set up the trailer and the way they portrayed Leon, I feel like it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I like this whole kind of like grungy kind of like, kind of, I wouldn't say like, sadder looking like Leon, but I definitely like the portrayal of like, hey, this guy, I just saw a lot of crap from my
Yes.
last
Yeah.
adventure. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm like, and what did he say from the end of the trailer? Like, he said like, this time will be different. Like, clearly that experience he had in Raccoon City that one night, right, really messed him up, and he just wants to get better this time around, right?
Yeah, and he has the death of
Oh,
Ada on his conscience too, or so he thinks, right? Like, until he,
oh yeah, so he thinks.
yeah. So
But
go ahead.
that's the thing, though. Like, are they gonna retcon certain information? Because remember, in regular Resident Evil 4, you already had intel that like, that Ada was, working with Wesker and
Right,
right,
because he's
in
like, it
between.
is true. You working with
It is
Wesker,
true.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, so now he knows. Okay, so she may be alive in that universe or whatever, right? So, are we changing that? Because if he's still kind of like in this, state where he's kind of like, oh man, I could have saved Ada. Like, I mean, I wish things were a little bit different. Are they gonna retcon that portion? Like, and I even heard like, that rumor with Jack Krauser, right? They're saying they're gonna take off his portion of the game, whatever. Some people say that's not true.
Right.
I don't know.
That's all
I don't know.
speculating, right? It's like we don't even know
Yeah.
what can be what could be true or what not. I mean, listen, how do you feel about Krauser, man? Because I actually don't mind his character, but I think that like, they have room to do improvement with him. So why would they just get rid of him? It was kind
Oh
of
yeah.
my thing in my little video I did on it with like, if he is being cut, like I think it would be a wasted opportunity to go and fix what fans had a problem with him in the OG one, where they're like, oh, he
Yeah.
comes out of nowhere, blah blah blah, this and that. How can they implement Operation Javier? Like all these connections, and it's like they could flash back, they could do whatever they want, but I think they have room to improve Krauser. They can even touch up his
Yeah.
design. I don't think fans will be too
Yeah.
mad about that.
You know what? It's, okay, this is just like, like, it's funny enough. I'm in the middle of editing right now, right? And I'm touching on Leon's character, and obviously I have to cover Operation Javier. And for you guys who don't know, Operation Javier is a mission that happens in between the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4, right? And this is where like Leon was introduced to Krauser for the first time, right? Because remember in Resident Evil 4, like, they're comrades. They mentioned they're
Yep.
comrades, right? Former comrades. So this is where they first met, right? And so like you said, I don't want them to cut Krauser. I want them to explore more of his background because in Operation Javier, on if you play his character, he has that internal monologue.
Yeah.
He always had like, I mean, was he a good guy? I guess, yeah, like a little bit. But then, little as the story goes on or that mission goes on, he starts like, like, Leon, like, why are you doing this? Or like, look at this power of like the virus. Like, I could use this. Like, my new rebirth, whatever.
He's
he
always
said,
very
I'm like,
mercenary-esque, where like he's not really on anyone's side. He's just doing shit
yeah.
for the job, but then he also has his own incentive.
hmm And I think that's the thing. Like you said, if we want to explore Krauser, I feel like we need to explore his life a little bit just after Operation Javier. Because remember, he got injured in that mission, right? His left arm, particularly, right?
Yep.
And that same left arm was the same one that mutated in Resident Evil 4, right? So maybe in between that, like, maybe he went like a little psychotic or kind of like, man, like I'm not the guy who I used to be because now I got this injured arm. I'm not as strong as I used to be. So how do I get that power? We know he, got in contact with Wesker, right? And somewhere along the line, he got he got the his powers or mutation, right? In RE4, right? So I want that explored to kind of like a process and his mindset, like why really go through all this? Yeah, he mentioned like he did it for Umbrella's sake, but why?
That's
though? Like,
yeah, exactly
what is
why.
it?
Yeah, and I think they should also explore more into Umbrella's fall. Post like Jill's in her apartment with that sample at the end of RE3 remake. Can we see more after that? Can we see is there more that follows instead of just kind of saying stock market's crash and Umbrella was finished and this? It's fine, like it's fine to get it going.
Yeah.
But like I think the intro can be it can pop more. We can open the intro with Ashley running through the woods. Maybe we play as Ashley and she's like running scared or something. Maybe she's driving from college and we see that because that's what happens in the OG. We don't see it, but it happens. Krauser kidnaps her. Maybe we see how she gets kidnapped. It might not be by Krauser, but by who and how. This is all stuff that we can see. I mean, judging from the trailer, she's running scared in the woods, and it looks like a cinematic cutscene. It could be just, that kind of like, in-game kind of thing, or like, that made for a trailer kind of cinematic. But that'd be cool to see. There's just so many things that I think the things that I have problems with RE4, which is very little. Again, it's like a near perfect game. But those little things with the story, the little tweaks with Krauser, the little tweaks with Umbrella they can make, can really just redefine it and make it the best remake. Like why this is, I think this is a very important remake for them to get right.
Oh, perfect. You said it perfectly right there. They need to get it right. This is such a big deal in terms of game wise, right? Because like you're messing with a game that's heralded as like a lot of people say it's the best Resident Evil game, right? So you really want to make sure that's really, really good. So like the whole Krauser situation, like that'd be great to really delve into it because like I said, while editing and doing all this, I have to make sure I do all the research, right? And like like you mentioned before, like yeah, it was Krauser who was the one who took Ashley, right? Wanted to do it because what, like you want to kind of be on good terms with Osman Sadler, right? Kind of like be like, hey, look, I'm part of the part of you guys, kind of a little bit,
Right. And then but he's also like going in to try to get the sample for Wesker, so he's kind of like a he has to go in there to gain his trust, and then it's like all of a sudden he has, this power, but he's very different than, the other people that are infected with the Las Plagas. So it's very, I like that they add different forms of infections, and that's why I hope they still kind of keep the designs and stuff really similar. And they really, I know they will. I know they won't change that much, but yeah, I definitely think it's cool that like, we have a second chance at this. That's why I think like with RE3, where I did like it as a remake, and when me and John reviewed it back then, we were still sticking up for it for being a really good remake, even though, the stuff I didn't like about it was Type 2 Nemesis, the change in his design, and I didn't like that they cut the clock tower out. I wish they kept the Gravedigger in there. There's a lot of things that I wish, just as a fan, I wish they added in, because RE3 Original is my favorite game of all time, not even just RE game. But I still appreciate it, and I know that they can take things to another level where they won't necessarily take, because I think that's the biggest topic when some people like talk about like them getting it right, is because they look at RE3 and what was cut. They're like, I don't know if I can trust this, and even though it's the same team that did Resident Evil 2 remake, it's not this team. They changed teams in between that production thing, right? We heard about that when that went down. I think all of us kind of talked about it on our respective channels, but I don't think we should fear that this time. I think that they know the water they're in right now. They know like that like this is material that can't be messed with. Like you said, it's such a main staple in gaming history, and they have to really acknowledge that and obviously stay true to it in the end, and not really kind of make adjustments that are completely unnecessary versus making adjustments that really benefit the overall game and really impact fans in a good way. It's a lot of weight. It's a lot of weight on them, but I'm not one of these people that are just like, just because this and RE3, sure, you should be aware that these things did happen in the remakes, and you should make sure like, okay, sure, this time I'm going to be really looking out for stuff that's cut. Maybe you'll have more of a, you'll have your guard up, but at the same time, I don't really think that RE4 is a very long game. There's a lot going on.
It is.
So I wonder how that's going to play into it. Like, are they going to keep the same length, and what do they change, And like, obviously I want the island change too. Like I don't really like the island enemies getting shot at by the Gatling guns and all that stuff. That stuff, like I talk about all the time in the videos. Like I wish if they're going to change something, the island is like one of those essential things that need to be kind of refocused into that horror side of the island with the regenerators, instead of like full on action, and then it kind of goes into the boss fights at a weird time. It could be changed a lot, but it's still a great game. I can still play it to this day, and I'm like, this is still just great. But I know, like you said, like that new generation of fans, whether you're coming in from the remake or you're coming in from 7 or 8, they're bringing in so many new people, the movies, the shows, however people feel about them, it's all tapping into more people, bringing them in to hopefully all platforms, so they see everything for what it is. They don't just look at a live action adaptation and say that's it, that's Resident Evil, because it's not. They gotta play the real thing, right? They gotta know where this stuff came from. So yeah, we're seeing different pockets of that. Do you have, what's your, like, I'm assuming your favorite Resident Evil game of all time is 2.
OG
2.
Resident Evil.
OG 2. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Like you mentioned it, right? Like, with RE3 remake, I have my reservations for that. Like, to me, it was okay for me. Like, I didn't like the how short it was, obviously, because they cut a lot of content, right? I didn't like that. I liked what they did with Nemesis in the beginning. Remember when they first showed the demo, right? And then that was pretty much it. You like that. I feel like the best portion in the demo, or what they showed in the demo, was the best portion of Nemesis.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was a little let down with that, because I was like, I thought I was gonna go like uptown, downtown. You see Nemesis just still like follow me. The next thing you know, Clock Tower, he's still gonna follow you, whatever. And then he's gonna have the cutscene of him like destroying the helicopter. You know what I mean? Stuff like that, right? But instead, you get this like quad pedal, monster, and it looked great. To be honest, it was really cool. Like, I was like, holy moly, this is a cool like reinterpretation of Nemesis. But though I feel like that should have been reserved a little bit farther after the clock tower, right, where he really like sustains a lot of damage. But I want to correlate this with RE4 was the fact that I understand how the fans have like some type of like apprehension in terms of like, okay, they're gonna remake RE4, but from what we saw with RE3, it's kind of like I really hope they don't go the same route of taking certain content, right? What if they take off the whole castle location?
That's
Imagine
what
just
people
going
are
from the
scared of,
village.
right?
Yeah, like what if they're like, what if they take off Salazar? Like, or like, you know what I mean? Or just like I said, the castle. I mean, that would be a huge blow. I mean, I don't want that. I want this to be the greatest remake that they could possibly make. Because like they have the foundation for it already. They have the storyline. All they have to do is reimagine it in the modern era, right? They have a really already a solid story for it, right? They have good locations for it. I mean, think about it. Like from a development standpoint, and I'm not saying I'm a game developer or anything, but they already have the assets to make like Resident Evil 4 remake. Think about it. We have RE Village, the village, right? There's that castle already. It's already pre-made, right? So all the assets are already there to make it like already they already have the foundation for a great RE4 remake. Just don't cut out the content that was really important from the OG though. You know
Yeah,
what I
and that's
mean?
really going to step on the fans' toes. That
Mm.
makes that makes them apprehensive in the first place. And I
Oh
definitely see what
yeah.
you're saying. Like that's yeah, and I think people, because there's so much involved in that game, I think there's a lot of different stuff with different bosses and different layers. So I wonder how they're gonna either include them all, combine them. Are they gonna do a situation where they make that they turn the Dead Factory into Nest 2? Like, are they gonna kind of like take like the island and kind of make it like part of something else? Like, not I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there'll still be an island, right? Because that
Yeah.
that escape sequence on the jet ski and stuff. I wonder if that's still going to be there, right? 'Cause that's pretty iconic. But yeah, there's just so much. Like our minds can go all day on RE4. Like, what could they actually do? Because it's like there's such a great opportunity to not really just kind of pass up on just the small little things that can make fans. I think because fans really just want to see a remake where it's like they want to see the remake story consistently in
Yeah.
this in the storyline, where I think it got a little after 4 it got a little jacked up. It kept getting more and more kind of like crazier, and that's when it
Oh,
got a
convoluted,
lot
right?
more convoluted. And I think like now it's like, okay, this is your chance to just make it more simplified, but it could still be a little technical. It could still have all these little you know parasites and all that stuff,
Mm.
but just make it they're going to make it to where these newer fans coming in can really just, like you said, just pick up and play, and they not even have knowledge of the 2005
Yeah.
edition. But us fans, obviously we keep it alive and well in our hearts, always playing these games all the time. When now I want to kind of talk about a little bit with content. So like in terms of like you're a gamer, you're playing all these games and stuff.
Yeah.
What really kind of piqued your interest in the YouTube stuff? Because obviously, if you don't know, he has a YouTube channel, Hey Deva. If you guys aren't subscribed, you should go subscribe and check out his content for anybody listening or watching. But how did you get to that point? Was it just like YouTube going down the rabbit hole when YouTube was kind of in its infancy? Like, when did you get into that mindset of, I want to actually create stuff on this because I'm such a big fan? That's really how a lot of us start, right? We're like such big fans, and then we take it on as like we want to do videos on this thing.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I mean, is guys like you, your channel. I mean, it was you, like, it was you, LTRE, subscribe to, LTRE. I
Back
mean,
then, it was
obviously, because,
probably Resident Evil Dying 888 or Jill Sandwich or whatever it was. I was going by
no,
back then.
no, but like, I'm saying, like, your particular content, like, it was you,
Yeah,
obviously, Ro, right? Residents of Evil, um, uh, Susie, Sphere Hunter, right? Like, Resident Evil,
yeah,
that content, Where's Barry, Ink Ribbon, those guys, like, all you guys were covering obviously all Resident Evil, but your guys' own versions of it, right? Like your own taste, your own take of it. And I was like, man, like I like Resident Evil. I mean, and then this was a time. Remember, I told you like I started this channel in 2018, and remember this was a summer when they announced uh RE2 remake, right? You know,
Yes.
like the trailers and then Devil May Cry 5. And I'm a big Devil May Cry fan too, you know. Actually, my first 20 videos were just straight gameplay, no commentary, just like the first Devil May Cry, just like, you know, on DMD mode, whatever. But anyways, going back to Resident Evil, yeah, I was like, okay, RE2 remake, you know, is being announced, and I'm like, my favorite Resident Evil of all time was OG RE2. So I was like, I want to start. I want to do something. You know what I mean? Like, I want to share like what I know, because like I see these guys and they're doing absolutely amazing, and so I want to try to get into that too. I was like, I mean, I want to show like, you know, my passion for Resident Evil as well. Not that I knew like, oh my gosh, my channel will blow up like this, you know? Like I didn't know that. Like I was like, all right, if I get like, you know, even 10 people watching my video, I'll be like, okay, this is great. Like, think about it? I mean, 10 people in real life just to watch your
That's awesome,
content,
man.
that's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
lot. I mean, but then like, you know, like I said, like you guys have your own versions of like or takes of like how you guys covered Resident Evil. So I was like, all right, let me get this started. Like, you know, I'm gonna use my like, you know, my first mic, and I sounded terrible. Like that's
Sure.
how I
Yeah,
got
yeah.
started,
Gotta
right? Like, you
start.
know, and then and I start taking in like, okay, well, what works best for me, right? Like, I mean, me and you talked earlier before we got on live, like we speak more in kind of, I would say, more in relaxed tone, right? You said that too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're not like over the top, like look at this like craziness, like,
Yeah.
you know, like, hey, what's up guys, like, you know,
Yeah.
how's it going, my name's Hey Devil, like you guys gotta check out Resident Evil. Like I can't do that, and
Right.
even if I try to do it, I'll be drained, and I can't keep up that same energy,
And it
right?
wouldn't be like
So I
genuine, right? Like it wouldn't be like your genuine like voice. Like this is, you know.
exactly. Yes, and exactly, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when it comes to like, you know,
Yeah.
helping others trying to like, you know, start their content. But like, you know, but starting this channel and trying to like, you know, base it off. I wanted to base this channel off survival horror, right? But obviously, a big part of my life was Resident Evil. I had to cover it, right? And then I love Devil May Cry, but you know, even though it's not this, you know, Devil May Cry is not a horror-based game because obviously it's action style combat, you know, hack and slash. The origins of that came from Resident Evil, right? Resident Evil 4. So that's where it all started. Like that's how I got into it. And then as the years got on, like I mean, like cover the story, cover the trailers, my own take, like you say, congruent. You got to be congruent to you,
Yes.
right? Like, you know, it has to come from you, because if you're not, if you're putting out content that's just out there that everybody could just binge on, but it's not congruent to you, people could notice that. And I know, like, you know what I mean? Like, people know you're not genuine. People know if
Absolutely.
you're just like faking it. Like, there's some, like, you know, I know, and I know this for a fact, there are some channels out there, they're like, oh man, the Resident Evil hype train is like, you know, it's all-time high. Let's get in on it. And then like, and then I listen to it because as a big fan, I don't care how much I know about Resident Evil, I could always learn more, right? So I listen to other people, and then they say that like, you know, Jill, like for example, Jill was never there in Resident Evil 1. I was like, what?
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
wait, wait, wait,
Like you hear
wait, wait.
shit and you're like, "What?"
I
And then
was like,
people listen
wait
to
a
that
minute.
and then they believe it.
Yes, and
And-
you know it's crazy. And the thing is though, like, and then I remember this is crazy. Then I get a comment saying like, "You're a liar." Like, you know, this guy said that this portion of the story, this is what happened. I was
Yep.
like, "Wait, what?" Like, you know,
Who
so I
said this? Like, you know
yeah,
what
so
I
I was
mean?
like, "Wait a minute." Like, you know, I was like, then it made me think. I had to double check my lore. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, did I put out something wrong?" Then I
Right.
checked out the channel. Then I checked. I was like, "Oh, okay, I see." So I feel like that's where like, you know, where I really wanted to go with like this channel too. Like, you know, I want to share my passion for Resident Evil 2, right? You know what I mean? Not 2 per se, but like just Resident Evil, right? The
Right.
whole franchises in general. And then like my own take on it, my own congruency to it, right? And I'm just like, man, hopefully people like really enjoy it. And I really do hope people enjoy my interpretation on how I speak, because you know, for the viewers out there who don't know, English is my second language, and I'm really conscientious with the way I speak, you know, my vocabulary, my accent, and whatnot. Me speaking to you like this right now, live, is really difficult for me, because it's like, in a way, sometimes I have to kind of process in my mind and like, okay, how am I supposed to say this, right?
Sure.
Sometimes it's just like, because usually my mind goes like 1,000 miles an hour. I could speak to you really, really fast. Like I could be like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, you know, like we're gonna talk about Resident Evil 4, blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's my natural, you know, speech pattern. But for me to kind of slow down and kind of like, hey, like, we're talking about Resident Evil 4, like that's really difficult for me. So for me to go and like take that leap, like I'm gonna have people listen on something that I feel really self-conscious of, that was a big deal for me. I wanted to have that congruency, like, hey, I know this is like my weakness. I feel like this is some like a big insecurity that I have with my life, because I've been bullied before because of the way I speak,
Right.
my
Right.
accent. So for me to share something that like I've been bullied on, and kind of like, and then sharing something, a game that I had like a great memory of, I feel like that all culminated together, and like, wow, I got like a great fan. Like oh man, I had this one subscriber. Like I remember right now. I remembered he was my 13th subscriber, right? And to this day, he's still like commenting on my videos. And I don't want to like I don't want to get him doxxed or anything, but like I know him for a fact. Like he's been there from the beginning, and like a lot of them, actually a lot of them has been there from the beginning.
Same
And
here.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Yeah, it's like my goodness, these guys are amazing. These guys are some of the nicest people out there, and it's like, man, like don't worry about your like your your voice, or like I love. And the biggest thing too is like one of the biggest compliments I got was like, man, I love the sound of your voice, and I was like, what? Really, dude? Like
Right.
I have an accent. Like English is my second language, and like I'm just trying to, speak the best I can from the
Yeah,
heart.
I would
And
have
it's like,
never known unless you told me, man. And the way you're handling yourself, even right now on this show, man, like that's you're fine. You don't even got to worry about
oh,
it, you know.
thank
But
you.
yeah, no, man, I know what you mean. It's like you get like, it's like you have certain fears, and then it's like, and then all of a sudden, once you get like someone just like they're not even pointing out something that you thought they were going to point out in whether it's whatever it is, and it's like it's because it's like it brings people right to that they hear a voice and like, yo, this guy knows what he's talking about, and I can tell he like put time into this. And I think that's like it's really cool once you start, like you said, you start cracking into that lane of like people that really appreciate what you're doing, and they always show up, because you keep showing up, to the table. They keep showing
Here,
up.
but here, I just want to like here, I want to like give you props on this though, like you particularly, right? Because and this is something that you and I, we talked about it before this this live podcast or whatever. I said that you have a flow. You have like you could literally get on like live on YouTube and just like have that rhythm. Like, hey, I'm at like I could just play like my game right in front of you and just like spew out like like all the information. I could do that. You know what I mean? Like you have that nice flow. Like you don't even have to think about it. You have that natural talent of doing that. Right?
Thanks, man.
You like and JJ, like you guys have a presence of how like things how things are supposed to go. You could, and that's a talent that I don't have, but it's something that I appreciate that you guys have, because it's like I could see, even though we're all like covering the same content, just the fact that you're able to like interpret it like in your own way, but then I have my own version of it too. Like I'm more relaxed, like just a voiceover. I
Sure.
feel like that's what makes this community great, because it's like, oh, I'm gonna go listen to Ant and his take from it, like in this nice rhythm flow, and like and just like nice good information. And it's like he doesn't really need a script or anything. But here I am on my end, I'm like I'm reading through like a 20-page script, like when I'm doing my video, like but it's different things, like for the same exact community. And I feel like this is exactly what's making our little community here really amazing. You know what I mean? We all have our own little niche. We take pieces from each other, like pieces of like how we interpreted like certain things. Like for example, I want to learn how you guys do like the flow, rhythm and flow. So when I'm doing my voiceover, even though I'm reading through a script, I have to talk like as if I have a rhythm and flow. Because if not, then I'll be like, hi, my name is Deva.
Right. It sounds like a robot. Yeah.
Yeah, like like I want to be like, hey, what is up? We're talking about Leon Kennedy this time around, like stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I see what you're
have
saying. Like
rhythm
kind
and
of
flow.
work on the craft a bit, right? And it's like you kind of and yeah, that stuff definitely. It really for me personally, it just came with time of just trying to like because YouTube was never it wasn't always a live streaming thing, right? So it's like when I was doing videos before, it was almost like I was like how I started was doing let's plays. So like I'm sitting there with this like DVD recorder and this camera that's recording audio only, and I'm like, hey guys, like I'm talking to just nothing, and I'm trying to make something out of nothing and try to come up with like. So I think that was like early on for me, that was like practice, was doing those old let's plays. And if you guys don't know what let's plays are, for people that don't know, It was back before live streaming, back before anything. It was just when you had a commentary and you were
Mhm.
playing a game, it was called a Let's Play. And it was started in 2006, 2007 by screenshots from, this guy named Slow Beef, who's part of Retsu Prey and a bunch of other, stuff. But that's how Let's Play really started. And that was before. Now it's like, it's not really called Let's Play. It could just be a live stream or whatever. But it was really a playthrough from start to finish with your input on the commentary. And I always found that so fascinating. I always wanted to do it. But for me, looking back now, doing this 12 years, I noticed that like that really was the practice for me before I got to the live crowd and before I got chats coming in and all this stuff. It was like I had to come up with stuff to say or talk about stuff, and some of it was bad, not all of it was good. You learn through the years, but that's really what tried. Like I just wanted to just start talking about that, and then the podcast was more just like that was from 2012 onward, but that was more just like okay. Let me try to bring a podcast, because there wasn't any podcast around at the time on YouTube at all on Resident Evil. And I was like, well, I wanted to make this, kick it off of YouTube, be this, there's no one really talking about RE in depth at that time. There was probably, at the time, there wasn't even Residents of Evil. There was probably maybe like, 10 Resident Evil channels maybe that were core that were just doing that. Maybe there was other channels that did a couple other Resident Evil channels. For me, it was like I really started doing the Let's Plays and the collection updates because I wanted people to just kind of I wanted to find other people that could relate, because not everyone, even that were my friends, all of them really liked Resident Evil. Some of them did, and some of them do to this day. But I wanted to tap into that. Like, hey, here's a diary of all the stuff I've collected, and here is, I wanted to kind of bring up that discussion, and that kind of started, just back when the channel was like, it was on a YouTube platform that only had 10-minute limitation uploads, and you couldn't live stream instantly. So it was the reach was it was almost easier because there was less Resident Evil channels, less channels in general, but it was also very hard because, I'm a kid out of, I was in high school still. I barely had, enough equipment to do it. I did what I could, right? So there's a lot of reasons why other channels do what they do, and different eras and YouTube come and go. And the algorithm is always something that's always changing too. Like we always got to deal with that, right? So like, I think a lot of people, when they ask us like, like what would we do starting out now? It's a very different game, right? Because even, you've been on it since 2018. It's completely different than it was in 2018, and I've been on it since 2010, and it's changed like 6 or 7 times. So, what are some of the things that that you've learned in terms of like just doing it in the last couple of years? And I guess like, in terms of if someone were to ask you the whole like, starting out thing, I guess what would be your advice to them in 2022? And it might seems like a very full question, but we can obviously bounce back and forth off of each other for this one.
Well, okay. Before I start on that, it's great. I just want to touch on your interpretation of how you started, but just to see, like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You have that nice flow of you're able to just spew out whatever you can say, because it's like, and it sounds great. Me, I have to kind of like pause for a second, right? Just but
sure.
But you understand, see, this is what me personally, you deserve so much more subs, man.
I appreciate that, man, because I didn't know that that you watched the channel and that was part of like your until you told me. I was like, dude, that's really fucking cool, because that's very humbling, because I'm just someone out of South Jersey that's just trying to make content and do something that is like just again a little bit relatable to people that watch it, and I don't know, I'm happy to be a part of such a a great, I guess, a great thing that just became so much more bigger than we've ever could have imagined back then. Even like going all the way back to watching RE Challenger, because they were one of the first Resident Evil YouTube channels ever doing live stream stuff, and that's there's so many great things that again kind of come from those different eras, and it's changed. It changed so much, man. It changed a lot. Like it went from Let's Plays to not doing Let's Plays anymore, to not doing pre-recorded parts, to doing live stuff. Like the live stuff took a big turn. So yeah, I guess there's a lot of things, but like I guess the platform, I would say, a lot of people have to just kind of find what they like and really try to just stick with it. And YouTube rewards you if you just do a certain topic, right? Because
If you
is that safe to
stick with
say?
that topic,
Right.
yes.
It's safe to say
And
that. Like, don't get too like I'm doing 7 different series and franchises. Like, you gotta
listen,
reel it in, unless you're one of these like real life vloggers, these like these lifestyle kind of videos. Like, that's a different.
mm,
That's more again. That's that like
that's a
reality.
different.
Right. That's a
Yeah, that's a
different lane.
completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, going back real quick,
Absolutely.
there wouldn't be my channel without you, or Ro, or like Sphere Hunter, or like Where's Barry, like, or Ink Ribbon. Like, my channel would not exist without any of you guys. You know what I mean? So just the influence that you have, you think that you don't really have that much of an influence. Trust me, dude. Like, your influence is like much bigger than like what it really is, because like you're impacting people's lives here. You know what I mean? It's like, and just for you to imagine, like, who would have known? Like, holy moly, like, I'm in a freaking interview with the freaking godfather of like Resident Evil content and YouTube. Like,
Oh, come
holy
on.
moly, this is great. Like, I was like, man, like, I'm all like fanboying here. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, this is great. Like, and this is my first time doing like this kind of live podcast, and I'm doing it with the guy like I was watching before. I'm like, holy moly. So but going back to what you were saying, like, if people were to kind of start their YouTube, right? And I think you touched on this before. I think you really have to find something that you have a really, really big passion for. I know it sounds cliche, right? Like, just follow the passion.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Follow
whatever.
the dream.
Yeah, like you're like but the reason I say that is because it correlates with the whole changes on YouTube, is because like if you do a certain content, you don't want to be burned out, because like if you're not passionate for a content, and with the way YouTube is, like, where it wants you to churn out as much content as possible, if you can't keep up with that because you don't have the passion for it, then your channel is not really gonna like do anything, because people see that. And we touched on it again, like, you have to be congruent, like, because people really, really notice, like, if you really are a big fan of whatever. You could be a big fan of for example, like, let's say Silent Hills, right? They would know. But let's say, like, here I am, just a casual, like, I'm gonna talk about Silent Hill because it's a big thing right now. People are gonna notice, like, hey, like, how come you didn't notice this? Like, how come you didn't mention this character? Like, what are you talking about? That was completely off. People recognize these things, and when that starts happening, it kind of, destroys the credibility of your channel. So not only are you burnt out, now people are like, know that you're not really a big fan. So that's, if you really want to start a YouTube channel, it has to be, first you have to like have a passion for something that you're gonna cover.
Yes.
Because I think one of the biggest mistakes people do before starting a YouTube channel is like, I need to go buy my mic. I need to go buy my my camera, because these are the most important
look
things.
nice, yeah.
The equipment. Yeah, I have to have like my man cave, or you know what I mean. I have to like double monitors, like with a nice like 60% keyboard. I have to make it
Yeah.
all look nice, right? All that. That's not even a priority when you first start YouTube, because like when you start YouTube, you're gonna be really, really bad. I don't care, like I mean, we could look at the biggest channels out there. Any channel, my channel. I sound terrible.
Mine too. I sound
like
bad.
exactly. And it's like, you're like, what? That's you, like And it's funny enough, like probably like 2 months ago, I listened to my one of my first couple of videos, and I'm like, oh, like I told my wife, I was like, should I delete this? Because this is pretty bad. Imagine like the first, like first timer on my channel listening to it, like, dude, you suck. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I have
but
that
then,
fear too, right? Like people going back and like that's the one thing they watch you and they're like, oh man, but
dude, like this guy is like, he has no idea what he's doing. No, but that's the thing though. That's a part of the growth like process in YouTube, right? Especially like you mentioned that, like from when I started my channel in 2018 till now, so many changes gone through it, right? Like, I mean, obviously besides the whole like new like terms of like, when before we upload a video, I'm sure obviously there's like the amount of boxes we have to click on, and like, okay, is it is it controversial, or like
is it
does
kid
have,
friendly?
Like,
Yeah.
kid friendly, hates, like stuff like that. That didn't even used to be there, and then
It was the
not
Wild
only
West,
that, like,
my friends. It was the Wild West.
I'm sure for especially for you. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, when you were still uploading, like, do you remember, like, in YouTube, they still had, like, the stars, right? Like, the little stars.
5-star
like,
ranking,
kinda like,
Yep.
Yeah,
I remember
like,
seeing the
back
5-star
then.
ranking on my RE4 Let's Play, and I would have to make the Let's Plays, a Resident Evil 4 Let's Play, that could only be 10 minutes long per part. With how long that game is, I think that Let's Play was like 40 something parts. Like no one was gonna sit there and watch all of that, because it, like, you know, and then everyone saw the you know, the combination of like, okay, now 15 minutes, and then you could do. But back then you had to be a director account. I only had a director's account on my actual film channel. You know what I mean? So the director's account I didn't have, and that was the only way you could get over that limit, and that bandwidth wasn't just handed out like, yeah, you can just have it, right? Now it's like, what? There was a limit on that? Well, yeah, it was, you know, and the description used to be on the right side of the video, the yellow subscribe button, you know what I mean, and all that, and there's a cat. But no, it's just it's one of those things where you know, I always like the fact that there is, like, you know, different waves of people from different eras, because there's always some kind of perspective that they can give, you know, because even 2018, like, dude, like next year, that's going to be, you know, 5 years. That's half a decade. A lot can happen in half a decade if you think about it.
It's crazy.
Just 5 years, 10, let alone, you know, 10 years. Yeah. But like just 5 years on this platform that Google owns, you know, there's so much shit that changes. So you're right, man. It's definitely always evolving.
Exactly. And, you know, here, like, you know, kind of like, so we could kind of help our viewers and all that, and like for those people who kind of like want to start this YouTube thing, right? There's not one formula that you could try to do to kind of like, oh yeah, like if you do this, you're gonna be like, you know, as successful
You can
as
smash
like,
the
you know,
system or something.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
oh no, there's even like even the biggest YouTubers out there, they like, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and they even admit like the algorithm is always changing, right? I mean, like, you know, in terms of my videos, like, I don't know if you noticed, like, a lot of my like latest videos are more like kind of long format kind of
I
videos.
noticed that, like, right.
Yeah, like documentary style, right? Like having like where I'm putting what do you call that, timestamps on it. Like it goes like chapters, right? And I noticed that like in the background in the analytics, there's a huge spike with each, like, you know, chapter that you make. So back then my videos, like, you know, for those of you who, like, you know, if you guys want to start a YouTube channel, when you guys upload a video, you want a retention rate, and from the way it looks from your perspective, it looks like you're going like a downhill, and kind of like, you know, you want to kind of keep it in a good plateau, but if your video doesn't do good, it just goes straight down
Immediately.
right? And that video, exactly, and you don't want that. Okay, so what I'm noticing, because this is my style, right? You know, for you, Ant, like you have the nice flow rhythm. I can't do that, but my style is starting to evolve into like more of a long format documentary style kind of like, you know, take on it. You know, like chapter by chapter. You know, like, you know, kind of like lore, you know, covering like the background.
It's
Then we're
nice
talking
though,
about the
because they're
present time.
chunkier videos. Like there's more, you know, like there's a lot, like you said, the timestamps is important, right? Because a lot of people just click through the timestamps. That people
Yes.
want that, you know, and you can see that in, like you said, the analytics. It breaks it down and it shows you like how fast did the people click off the video, and where did they click off, and like it really, they've really updated it in a way where you can see things in a little bit more of a more of a perspective, to where you can kind of like see how you can fix it. But even that won't give you enough information, as far as like you said, because you have to know like kind of your audience. Like you have to know what they're clicking
want.
away from and what they want,
Yeah.
right?
But here's another thing too, and like, you know, this whole change in algorithm right now, like, and they're preferring like with chapters. I'm still a little bit confused on it at times, because, for example, I would post a video. I posted a video like a year ago, right? And it did okay, you know what I mean? Like, you know, a couple thousand. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, for that timeline, like it kind of flopped, right? For me, right? Then literally like a year later, that video will just like, it will just boom out of nowhere, and I'll see it on the analytics. You'll see like, you know, a quick uptrend on the video, on the analytics for that video. You're like, what happened? Like, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, Resident Evil is trending, but why that particular video, right? Like, why did that suddenly like get pushed out there out of nowhere? So this is why what I believe, that like, you know, when you're making content out there and at first it doesn't look like it's doing good, trust me, like in a year, like a year or two or so, because I've had like a couple videos now, actually not just a couple, many videos, out of nowhere it'll just blow up out of nowhere. So you just never know which videos are really gonna, like, you know, really do good. I mean, just to be frank, my biggest video right now, it has like I think 3.3 million views, right? It's
Wow.
like my Tyrant video. But to be honest, when I listen to that video and just the quality of that video, I'm like I don't at that time I loved it, but now I'm like, yeah, I feel
Right.
like I did it like there's a huge like gap between that version of like
And what
how I
you're
was
doing
editing
now.
to now. And I feel like my latest videos are much better, like quality wise, sound wise, story wise, like concept wise. Because like remember, I don't have the rhythm and flow that you do, so I have to do it like a 20-page script, and I have to do it like okay, I'm talking about this portion, and it has to correlate to the next portion. I can't just be like going everywhere, right? Because it wouldn't make sense. So and then I listened to that video, and I'm listening to my newest videos. I'm like, my newest videos are a lot better. No, it doesn't have this many views. I
Yeah.
don't know that because out of nowhere, one of them will start blowing up, and it did. Like that Duke. I had a video covering the Duke. Like at first, it did good, for my channel. Next thing you know, it just blew up. So it's stuff like that. So
And to not
so
stop, right? Like, don't get discouraged, because it's easy to
yes,
do that, right? It's easy to like, and I've been guilty of it way back in the day, before I probably at that time probably had less than 1,000 subs back then, and
but here
it's harder when you're climbing to staying driven. But like you mentioned, that point of if it's something that you're passionate about and you like it, it shouldn't feel too much of a burnout to constantly keep going back to it. You know what I mean? But don't get discouraged is one of the big
exactly.
takeaways, right?
But here's the thing, like this is something like this is why you deserve a lot more props because just the fact that you've been on this platform for so long, and the fact that you're still doing the same content, you know what I mean? Like you're still covering Resident Evil. That tells me that like holy moly, this guy has a lot of passion for this, right? That's something that you really need because if you don't, then you could have quit anytime, right? You could have quit last year, right?
Absolutely.
Me and you
Yeah.
wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is why like you have to have the passion for it. If you do not have the passion for it, then I don't know what to say. Like it's tough. Like I mean, you could try, like and you know what? It's true. Like for example, like I haven't posted a video in almost a month. And that's a long time in YouTube time.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And but the thing is though, I'm making longer format videos. Back then, I used to churn out 2 videos a week, but they were like 5 minutes, or one video a week, 10 minutes. But the quality of my video, I feel like it's a lot better. But my latest video is gonna be at least 30 minutes. And for you, like for if you really want to start YouTube, I'm just giving you a heads up right now. My editing process, voiceover, script, thumbnail, and all that, for now, like right now, it's taking me at least 30 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's
Oh
that's a
yeah.
full work week.
Yep.
That's it's tough. You know what I mean? It's like people, but the thing is, and this advantage for you, like and like guys like JJ and all that. Since you guys have that nice rhythm and flow, you guys could be in live stream and actually get content out there faster. I can't do that. I absolutely cannot do that.
Mm.
Like for example, the trailer just came out. I could see you. You're like you could do like a live reaction, and literally like an hour or two later, you could hop on like, hey, we're gonna be talking about the trailer. We're gonna talk about this specific. You have that rhythm and flow. I don't. I have to go like watch that video, write my script.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Right. Work more on the script and keep chopping away at it until it's ready to be recorded. And so and that could
exactly.
be a few weeks into the process where you're really trying to. But you also have time to really like digest it and really like think, maybe maybe I could sleep on this too, and like maybe what I felt like, this week I feel a little bit different this week about this thing. So like you have a little time to kind of redefine, and maybe some information comes out, you know what I mean? Because they always do that where like the trailer will come out and then immediately, Capcom showcase, and we're gonna show, more stuff, and you're
Different
like,
like
okay, well, it's
information.
good
Yeah.
that I'm working on this video now because I get to kind of add, take a little piece out of there, put it over here, let me type about it. Yeah, so that's very interesting. Yeah, because your videos are all, they're all like in that style. They're not, you don't have live streams, you don't have a live
No,
chat.
never.
It's more just like here it is. This is how it's presented, and people like those longer videos. People really need. There's always you ever like you ever just like go on your like subscribers like or no, not subscribers but subscriptions like on your personal YouTube channel, the people you subscribe to, you ever just like
Mhm.
click there and you're just like fuck, there's like I'm caught up, it's
Yeah.
like there's always people like we always want more content to watch or longer form
Yes.
stuff to watch. So it's like
Exactly.
it's kind of funny how it works both ways. It's like like sometimes like yeah, if you're subscribed to like 1,000 channels, but we all have like, I'm always trying to find new people to watch too, but it's like it's funny because sometimes you can like it just shows you that our audiences are always looking for something new to watch. So if we put something out that's, whether it's short or longer, and people show up for it, it's because they're showing up because, you know, they know we have something to say in that time frame, you know, and yeah, it
There's a
really,
reputation about it.
absolutely,
Too,
big time. Yeah, it's just
and you
like,
know what? Like for example, like if I want like nice, concise, quick, you know what I mean? Like, hey, content out there, and like let's say the trailer did just come out, which it did, RE4 remake.
mm-hmm.
I could go to your channel, be like, I want to hear what Ant's take on this. You know what I mean? Because like that's why reaction videos are so popular, right? You might have your own opinion, but to hear somebody else's opinion kind of reaffirms like whatever your beliefs are, or like you're like, wait a minute, I don't agree with that, and you comment. That helps the algorithm kind of, right? You know, just a comment back. But
It does.
if you want that kind of style, you go with Ant. But then, like, you know, but I would say the advantage for my content is like, yeah, I can't pump out quicker, like, you know, content, but when you get to my channel, it's longer format, and we'll go through detail by detail.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's you know, and I think it's the mindset that, at least what me and you have, is it's really like, you know, it's really quality over the quantity, right? You know, because it's, you know, the quality of the video, like it really does show when you put that time into it, and it's not, you know, yeah, they're not getting a couple videos every week, but when they finally get that video at the end of the month, it's really going to be like, damn, that's like, this is why it took so long.
We're gonna watch it.
Yeah, we're gonna watch it too. Like, and then you see that watch time, you're like, damn, they're watching this. Like, this watch time's great, and that's the one thing
There
that
has to be a reason.
yeah,
There has to be a reason. They're
Yeah.
doing something good for their channel, right? Because, for example, if I did my videos and you posted it something like something similar to your channel,
Mhm.
it wouldn't do as good because it's not Ant. It's not your congruency. It's not what you do. You get what I mean?
Exactly.
I can't do what you do. I cannot do that. You have that talent. I don't. You get what I mean?
I see what you're
And
saying.
you know, like a perfect example, like, you know, somebody who posts like here and there, like I've mentioned before, like Spear Hunter, right? Or her take on it, right? When she posted like a video, people listening to it, right? Even though she would be gone for like 2 months.
Oh yeah,
But when she posts a video, it's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, we want to hear what she has to say about it, right? Because it's a reputation thing. Like, you're gonna get great content, lots of details, right? You know what I mean? She does like interviews or whatever, you know, and it's great. And people, that's the thing. It has a reputation of it being really, really good.
yeah,
Right? But then like I go to your channel, like I said, like, hey, like, you know, I want somebody who's knowledgeable with Resident Evil, like vast knowledge, and I could get it quick too. I go to your channel and listen in like your take on the RE4 remake trailer, and I'm like, yeah, oh, I totally agree. You know what I mean? Like, or some stuff like, oh, I don't agree with that, but I agree with this. You get what I mean? But it's still quality though, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't have this many subscribers if you didn't have any like if you didn't have quality.
Oh no,
You know what I mean?
thanks, man. No, and that's what kind of why I always try to keep like a lot of the longer form stuff on the podcast. You know, that's kind of what started it. I was like, what's a longer way I can have these discussions where it's not just like 10-minute videos or 15-minute videos back then. It was getting out of that at around like 2012 when the podcast started, 2 years after the channel started. So it was getting into, I think that's what kind of sparked it too. I was like, well, I could just upload this to like iTunes, which I did, but I wanted it to also be on YouTube because that was kind of home base. So, and that was always my platform to kind of discuss longer things. But even then, it's not like, so like you said, it's not so much scripted. It's just more like free flow conversation, or it's just like, oh, I'm going to talk about, you know, this particular news, you know, all the news stuff that's coming out in RE and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's like there's different forms of content for different people. And I think that's why, like you said, like everyone does have their pockets of people, and why everyone bringing their own stuff to the table is what really brings people coming back, you know? And,
Exactly.
and yeah, man, that's like, that's really the biggest thing. And I think like for people that are starting out and that are listening or that want to start, just know that, you know, there is new people on this platform every day, but there's always something that you could bring to the table. And, you know, you just have to keep showing up, and you have to stay ready now. You know what I mean? You want to be able to just like be ready for any opportunity. So like if you have, you know, any, all right, I want to jump in doing RE content when RE4 remake comes out. Well, RE4 remake comes out in March. You got X amount of time to get equipment. You got X amount of time to do what you got to do to get a flow down. And if you want to tackle it, you want to jump on some kind of, you know, that's how you have to stay, you have to be ready for that. and
Yeah.
stay ready for any kind of opportunity. Like, you know, it's almost like yeah, like because you just never know when you're gonna have to, you know, make a video, and that could be that one video that really puts you on the map.
That
You know,
blows you up. Like that's it. That's the one that really propagates the channel to really go high, right?
yeah,
For example, like this could, you know what I mean? Like, for example, like you could probably, and I believe this, once RE4 Remake comes out, and I remembered in one of your live streams, you said you're gonna go full on like, you know, coverage for RE4, right? I feel like next year I could see your channel like, you know, like 5xing. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
oh,
like
thanks, man.
really blowing up. Like, you know, because you could get the content out and it's quality still. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna play, you know, like a let's play, like you said. You know what I mean? Without really saying anything, you know,
Yeah,
and just like it's actually content because you know the lore because you've been at it for so long. You get what I mean? You already have the reputation. Like, hey, like, oh man, I already know like a lot of lore behind Resident Evil. And the fact that I'm gonna be able to have this rhythm and flow and also be able to put out content so quick, that's a really good combination to have for that upcoming game too. You get what I mean?
thanks, man.
So,
Yeah,
but like, you know, and you mentioned this, you just got to be ready because, for example, I'm gonna give you guys an example for those people who like are starting a channel, already have started a channel, but it seems like things aren't doing really well. Like I said, I started my channel in 2018, right? And I remembered I covered Resident Evil 2, just in general, OG, right?
hmm
And a little comparison within it. And I remember this what at that time it was a 22-minute video. And that for me that's long. I've never made that long of a video, but for me it felt like that was like forever, right? You know how long that took me to make that one video? 22 minutes. It took me 1 month to make. 1 month. And that to me is like, and then I'm like, okay. Once I clicked the upload button, I was like, all right, hopefully, please, I guess at least 100 views. Guess how many views it got in 1 month after uploading it?
how much?
78. I remember that. And
Wow, and
I
you're
was
just
like,
gutted. You're just like,
yeah, I was like, man, like I took all this time. Remember, I'm working full time too.
right?
So I'm spending like my weekends on this. I'm like, I'm waking up at like at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean, to do this before going to work. And like, you know, and I was like, 78. And you know what's funny? Like, I would say maybe 12 of those views were like, you know, from me because I replayed it maybe,
Yeah,
or like,
you
and like, you
showed
know,
a
some
buddy
from
or
my, like, you
something.
know,
You
my,
know,
yeah, like, yeah,
yeah.
my buddy or like my wife or my girlfriend at the time, you know. I'm like, oh man, this is such a bummer. I'm like, dang, 78 views after 1 month. I'm like, dang, my content must suck. Imagine that. That's a turning point, right? I could have stopped right there. And
Absolutely.
you know what that month was? Like, it was November. And you know what happens just right after that? They put out a trailer of showing Mr. X, right? You know?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like,
Yep.
all right, I'm just gonna do my take on this. Like, you know, so I watched the trailer so many times. I did my script, and I remember this was early in the morning. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was doing my voiceover, right? And you could even kind of hear in that video when I was talking. And if you listen to my old videos, I used to talk like like really, really quick, right? Now it's a little bit more slow right now, whatever. But back then I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna be talking about Mr. X, blah blah blah, like, you know. And I did that, and you could tell I was still like, you know, I barely woke up, whatever. And just and dude, I remembered that one particular video was only like 6 minutes long, right? That's for me, that was still long. I remembered in 1 hour I got 24 views, and I was like, oh, no way,
Right.
24 views. Because like the context is, it's like I have one video like that I made for 20. That's 22 minutes. I only had 78 views after 1 month, but now I have this one video that's 24 views after 1 hour, and then it got like, you know, and then throughout the week I remembered it. I was getting like almost like 100 views per day for that one video, and I was like, and I was showing people at work. I was like, oh look at it, I'm blowing up on YouTube. I'm almost to 1,000 views on my like on this one particular video. And it goes what you said. You just got to be ready
Yeah.
because when that moment comes, you have to capitalize on it. And I did. Like, so when that Mr. X video came out, I posted another video, and that next video was the one that really blew up at that time for my channel. It was a comparison of the old Mr. X to the new Mr. X. You know,
Yeah, those are
that one
great
blew up.
videos. Those are great videos to do when you're talking old and remakes, right?
Old and
Because people
new.
want to see it. You know, people don't know or
You
they
want to know
haven't
the
seen it,
difference.
and they want to see again, what you bring to it, what you like about it, you know, and that's like, yeah, just like stay ready and always show up, you know, keep showing up. Like, don't like, just don't kick
get
yourself.
discouraged.
Don't get discouraged, you know? And that's like,
Yeah.
I really try to keep saying that, because it's just like, and I appreciate you giving your perspective on it too, because I always like hearing and picking the brain of other content creators or filmmakers, like just like the process, you know, of like what, of kind of like, you know, when they started and stuff. Because I remember before I built the computer, I was on a laptop and I was rendering Let's Play parts. It would take me 15 hours. I was just killing my laptop hard drive. I was like, I gotta get this done, because the video would be like 20 minutes long, and to render that in HD on a Let's Play part, I was just like, I would wake up, go to school, but before I go to school, I'd click render. I'd come home, it still wouldn't be done. There'd be like, you know, 6 hours left, and I'm like, fuck. So, but you can't do anything, because like, you know, your RAM is fucking is screwed up. Like, it's like, you know, your computer's like, what's happening to me? You don't have, you know, it wasn't a laptop for editing. And it was just like what you did to not stop, you know? And the first thing I ever did that actually did okay, I guess it was kind of like what your experience was, where it was like the Lost to Nightmares Let's Play, you know, that came out that week. And I was like, you know, my channel that I just had for a while, that was also Resident Evil based, but it wasn't like, it didn't have a name like Resident. It was just Resident Evil, but it had like random crap on it too. And that got, you know, taken away. And that was just about to blow up because I was doing an Army of Two Let's Play. Again, nothing to do with Resident Evil. It was just like a hodgepodge of stuff. I was doing an Army of Two 40th day playthrough, and that was for some reason blowing up. And YouTube, you know, something happened. I don't know what it was, a strike or something. They didn't tell you back then. So I was very discouraged. I could have walked away then, but that week I tried to like recapture that flame, re-upload those videos, didn't do anything. So I was like, I gotta jump on something. Lost to Nightmares is brand spanking new. And little did I know it was going to be one of my favorite DLC things of all time. You know, I loved that thing. And I did that, and that at least got me to like 130 subscribers or something in a week, and that at least got me like, oh my god, I can still do this. And if it maybe wasn't for that, I don't know if I'd be here talking with you. I don't know, you know what I mean? It's kind of weird, because I could have walked away at any time because of just like, you know, stuff getting thrown at. And you know, again, I was still younger, so I only had so much at my disposal and so much money. And then I remember summer of 2013, I shot my, you know, feature film, which was, you know, feature when you're in high school, you know what I mean? You do it with your friends out back. You do a zombie film, right? And to edit this thing, I needed to build a computer, and it's the same computer I'm on now. That's obviously been upgraded. But, you know, shout out to Perry. You know, I do Game Complainers with him every week, but he's the one that was like, you know, do the computer, build it, because you can't edit like this. You can't do this. So I worked at it was a miserable job for the summer, but I was getting paid, you know, $7.25 an hour, packing limes, like actual limes in a box, right? Like just packing them, right? And, you know, this is when you're like, you know, you're just trying to, and I literally just did that for a month and just like hated my life. It was a summer job, you know, all the kids, because, you know, I still had another year of school. So I was like, all right, but I did that, and it was like, it was so worth it, because I was like, once I got that build and I was able to, like, Perry helped me build it, and it changed the game. I was like, oh, I can do so much more, and I'm still on it now. And obviously it's a lot. It's an older computer. It's been updated, but I'm working on, you know, saving towards getting something new. But it's just funny that like the things you go through just to get shit out there, and then when you finally get like a little I don't know, everyone needs like a little bump in their lives of just like a little boost of like encouragement, or like, hey, you can do this. And I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, if I can. I don't see a lot of other people my age doing this shit for, you know, putting all this time. Everyone, because, you know, like when you're in high school and shit too, like, you know, you see everyone around and you're like, there's no one that's really on this wavelength that, like, you know, not that you're seeing better, but like everyone's just doing their own thing, and you have your own circle of friends. And I think that was like where I always found comfort, was the content creation and filmmaking, you know. And we mentioned about not getting burnt out, and I think one thing that helps me is because I have a second channel, Inocula Productions. You know, I have my film channel that I'm trying to put more time into, obviously, with doing more movie reviews and stuff like that. And I think that always have helped me kind of like balance between the two, where like I don't like, even if there's times where I want to break from just gaming and Resident Evil, I'll just do the film stuff, because I want to make that more of my outlet to, like, you know, of if people want to hear me talk about, you know, other movies and see my short films and see what I have to do, check me out over here. You know what I mean? And that channel's been around since '07. You know, I've been doing dumb stuff on there, you know, since then. You know, just like, you know, you do shit with your friends, you do whatever, you know what I mean? And then you do the comedy skits, you do all that stuff. But I think that's like the thing, like just really just try to just, I don't know, there might be certain, again, it's really easy now for people to just get like a pre-built computer and just to get shit ready to go or like whatever. So I think, I don't even know if back then there probably was like already like pre-made computers you could buy. I don't know how much they were. I mean, 2013, it was a while ago in the PC world now. That's like a long time, because 9 years in that is like, we're so far away from where we were back then in that technology. So it's like, so it's just crazy, man. I don't know. I like talking about all this stuff because it really, I just want to give people a perspective as to like what kind of goes into our work, and like that people can do it too. And hopefully it encourages some people out there, you know?
But you know what? You know what really stuck in, like what you just said was, you said that you got 130 subscribers, right? And you could have just stopped right there. Like I said, just the fact that you're still going on after so much work that you put through, lots of setbacks, me and you, like, you know, I'm sure like there are times where you're just like, man, I just don't feel like doing, you know, my YouTube thing right now.
Absolutely.
You know, we're burnt out. Even though we have a passion for this, there are times where you're just like, man, I don't want to do this. You know, because once you post a video, you think like, oh man, this is great. Like, you know, it's gonna be amazing forever. No, it's not. Because the way YouTube is, it wants you to keep churning out content.
It rewards burnout. Yeah, it rewards burnout.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why it's so important. And again, it just shows like how much character you have, because it's like you're the guy like, hey, no matter how much setbacks or burnout, whatever, I'm just going to keep continuing on. And now you're past a decade and you're still here and you still have a prominent channel here. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And that takes a lot. It takes a lot of time and dedication just to do that. And I really hope that for anybody listening to this, that, you know, you could take these kind of experiences and kind of like, man, like, you know, if you guys posted a video and it's not doing great, I mean, look at us. I mean, we're not saying we're like the biggest channels out there. We are far from the biggest channels out there. We're nobodies, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely.
YouTube. Oh, and I mentioned this to you before we went live. I mean, the statistics of somebody even getting to 10,000 subscribers, so small, like, you know.
So small.
So it's crazy. So don't get discouraged. Stay the course, right? Like, stay passionate for what you want to do. But thing is, be congruent. And after all that, you go on, buy your mics, you know, upgrade whatever.
Yeah.
And
do what you got to do.
And
upgrade gradually, right? You know, like, do what you got to do there.
And you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, like, you know, and I just learned something that you know, I built my computer here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a tech person whatsoever, right? And I mentioned this to you before, but I had to learn how to build my computer, because before, like, you know, I was making RE content on all-in-one, you know, like touchscreen, you know, monitor, right? I mean, at that time, it worked good for me. You know what I mean? It worked. You know what I mean? It looked nice because it's glossy and perfect. You know, but it just couldn't keep up with the content that I was making, right? Like, I wouldn't be able to render because all my videos now are all 4K. I have a 3090 right now. You know how long it still takes for my videos to kind of like to edit, render, and all that stuff, and then upload on YouTube? It takes hours. It takes a long time still.
Yeah, exactly. That's
like,
that's with a beefier setup. Yeah, exactly. Like my stuff, I don't even have stuff ready for 4K. That's what my next thing will be. You know what I mean? So I can have that kind of ready, because I unfortunately can't produce 4K content. But again, it's just because of it's just because the technology. You know, like when I built this thing, it was just HD. It was 1080p, and that was it. And that was that was at the tail end of the 360 PS3 era. And that was when it was better to be on a PC than PS4 and Xbox One, because those consoles ran really bad from the start. So being on a built PC, that was the era when that became like, you got to build a fucking PC. Like, everyone was kind of whispering around. Everyone was like, you got to build a PC. Like 2012, 2013. It's kind of when that wave rolled back and people started to realize, like, hey, some of these consoles are crap. Or, hey, I could save a bunch of money on Humble Bundles and Steam games and all this crap. Yeah, I'm going to just do this. And you can, you know, make content on top of that from it. So, yeah, I think it's like, it definitely shows our creative side, where we're able to, like, you know, once we have that, like, you know, we know the time it takes, but like you said, there's a bunch of times where you can easily say, man, I don't feel like doing this, but you know that, like, again, just constantly, you know, trying at it and trying different things and trying to just get better, and then, you know, you realize, oh damn, because yeah, that's kind of how I felt. Like I was like, damn, I was rendering all these videos for, you know, whatever views, and it was so there were longer, it was a longer time. When you have a laptop that's like, you know, an Acer that's like $300, that's not meant to render 40 part Let's Plays. It's not meant to render 40 videos in its lifetime, okay? It shouldn't. You know, let alone a fucking a series, you know, a playlist. So yeah, that's just the funny stuff that I always look back on and always have a good laugh at and stuff like that. But you know, I'm really happy that we're able to have this conversation tonight, man. You know what I mean? Obviously, I would love to have you on again to just chat up some more stuff. You know what I mean? This was great. I really wanted to give people just kind of an insight to the content creation, but also I wanted people to you know, hear from you, another Resident Evil survival horror content creator, and you know, this is just I want to do more videos like this where I have people like yourself on and to just kind of give your perspective and how you feel about the games, man. You know, this was really a blast.
Definitely, like, you know, just, you know, hit me up anytime, man. Like, you know, I mean, you know, I'll let you know when I'm free, but like I said, like, I'm gonna keep myself available for anything, to be honest. Like, you have the opportunity. I'm not gonna mention, like, you know, whatever opportunity you have, but you have something big that could possibly happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it goes with, you know, what we were just talking about. Just get ready. Just be ready.
Be ready.
Or whatever. Because you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? You just don't know. And, you know, you mentioned, like, you know, hey, you know, I like to ramble, whatever, but going back to your setup, right? You said, like, you got, like, 1080p. Well, I mean, you got to remember, a lot of the viewership, I mean, from our analytics, I don't know if, like, you know, a lot of them are watched from our cell phones. So you really, I mean, you don't really need a 4K. That's just like a luxury that I have right now.
Yeah, it's a nice little perk
lucky.
because, and a lot of these games support it, right? So it's like when you're recording that stuff, it's like it just goes hand in hand with that. And now that the 5 and the series, all these consoles have, you know, that support. Yeah, exactly. It's just like, yeah, it's like you could still kind of make do with just, you know, the 1080 60. Just keep rocking that for a little bit longer. You know?
Oh yeah, actually, no, definitely. I mean, the human eye. I mean, yeah, you want that 60 FPS because it looks fluid, right? But from 60 to, like, let's say 45, yeah, you'll notice. But if you're watching that through a cell phone, and it happens, like a little frame rate issue comes in at like literally at like a second, you're not really gonna. I'm not gonna watch this video.
Yeah, and people really are on their phones all the time with the YouTube stuff. I feel like that's more than the desktop because you're, you know, premium, you can lock it and listen to it. There's people that just, you listen to the shows or the streams while you edit, right? So like a lot of people will, like people like us that use our desktop a lot will use it. But yeah, I like, to be honest, 90% of my YouTube usage is on my phone. Like 90%. The other is if I'm listening to, like, you know, synthwave or some other shit while I'm writing a script, or I'm doing, like, so, you know, I'm like in the zone. I got like a YouTube playlist in the background and I'm like typing away. That's kind of when I get in the zone and I'll be on YouTube, but I'll be like, it's always on the phone. Like, you're really right. It's like people are either watching it live on the phone or they're watching your videos on the phone. So yeah, it's just like, and now obviously the phones are just insane, you know.
Insane.
So they can shoot stuff that makes, you know, that you can put on YouTube in 4K that looks incredible. Yeah. So a lot of people have easier access than even like when we started out. There's even more, like, you know, now there's YouTube Shorts, and I still haven't grasped the YouTube Shorts. That's something I have to get better at. And I know that people can have, you know, you can have 1 million views on a YouTube Short and have 6,000 subscribers. It's really fucking weird. I don't know if you've seen like the YouTube Shorts like, algorithm, how wild it is. Like, I still can't really grasp it. I you know, I got to come up with some ideas and skits because I feel like I can do it because I love doing skits. You know, that's kind of where my like my origins stem from, like doing just like skits with my friends, you know, for film. So I love to do more skits on the Short. It's a great little thing for Google to do because they want to keep you on their platform. They don't want you leaving. They don't want you to go to TikTok. They don't want you to go to Instagram. Exactly. They want you to stay on there. They want you to stay on Shorts. They want you to stay, you know, again, open up your app, something immediately plays. It's there. It's instant, right? That's something I still
real quick.
Right. That's something I gotta grasp. I gotta get that down better. Whether it's on this channel or the film channel or both, I gotta, like, there's something there that I'm not getting that I feel like I have to, you know?
You know what? Just to point out, See, that would work out really, really well for you. Just the fact that, like I keep saying, you got that rhythm and flow. You could just you're able to do that. You're able to have that energy capture your audience. I think that would be really, really good for your channel because you have that natural like talent to do that. You know what I mean? That I think that would be a great idea. You know what I mean? If you really hone in on that. But though, like you said, I mean, the algorithm for that shorts is kind of wonky. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
very
not.
very strange.
Yeah. So I mean, and this is something that I noticed too. Like and I watched like so many different channels and whatnot. That and you mentioned this too. When you're making your channel, it has to be a certain style of video that you have to make. For example, I can't make like a 5 minute, Call of Duty video, put it on my channel and hope that like it'll do good. And then then do my regular thing. Is like, wait a minute, where did this come from? It could probably harm your channel.
You'll see
You
that
know what I
little
mean?
thing in YouTube Studios where it's like, this isn't doing as good as your other videos, and you're like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
shit. Well,
And you're
wonder
like,
why.
wait a
Maybe
minute.
because I talked
Like I
about Call of Duty for 10 minutes and everyone tuned
oh
out 30
man.
seconds in. It's like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly. It's got to be that one lane, and it could still cover. Like I can pull in a Silent Hill crowd. I can pull in a Dead Space crowd. That's what I'm doing. That's kind of what I'm trying to
Mhm.
do this year. Is like I'm doing I want to live stream Callisto Protocol. I want to still
Oh
dedicate.
yes,
I still
yes.
want to dedicate time within the RE stuff to just other stuff because it keeps it
Yeah.
refreshing for me and it also gives fans something else to watch, right?
Yeah.
Also, just when there isn't like I don't know, a bunch of new Resident Evil stuff. We had a little bit of a dry area before this
Yes. Yes.
boom of announcements. So, but yeah, it's just different things. Is there any I guess like one of the last things I'll ask you is like is there any style or any particular thing that you've always wanted to tackle on your channel but you haven't yet?
Uh, this,
Really?
this right here.
This?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like a podcast, kind of like live, kind of, n- very minimal editing, no like EQ changes in your
Yeah.
voice
Yeah.
or anything or like nice
The
filter to
scientist
make it look.
project that is the editing, what I mean?
Yeah,
Just going in,
yeah,
making it all like come together. There's something cathartic about that too. And then but there's also something that's like it takes a lot of time, dedication, I try to always I'm always like I try to put my phone like away. Like I'll just put it away
yeah,
because you do that thing where like you're sitting at a desk and you're just like, "Oh yeah, like oh this and that." And you get into the vortex. So I got to just push some of that stuff away and just edit. But
yeah.
it's like
It's hard. It's really hard.
it's really hard. But so podcasting, so
Yeah,
it's been something you always kind of
no,
wanted to do. And this is your first
yeah,
one that you've
like
been on, right? That's awesome.
yeah, like I mean, no, I've done a couple of podcasts, you know what I
Mm,
mean, but like it's more like a group setting,
right.
not it's not
Okay.
just me and you. It's like okay, player A, he's gonna tell his spiel, like player B, he's
Like a
gonna then
round
it'll
table
be my
kind of.
turn.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you know what? I've done a kind of an interview before. I totally forgot about this, but I don't know. His name was Jojo Wi-Fi.
Doesn't ring a
He's a
bell.
yeah, like he's primarily like DMC
Mm.
content, but I don't remember if he did Resident Evil, but anyways, yeah, I did, but I don't remember anything if he posted that, maybe I said something really bad or something, you know what I mean? But I don't think I did, but yeah, yeah, like this is really something that I want to do. Maybe learn from you and like how like, hey, I need to learn how Ant does it because I mean, yeah, he's been doing it for many years and he's honed this skill. Like, hey, he's able to just get on camera and just do whatever he wants. Some people could just literally just do it without any kind of experience. They could just do it because that's their natural flow, right? I can't do that, but I mean, it's something I could work on. And before I forget, like I had this in like back of my mind. You remember you just mentioned that it's completely random. We had like a dry spell of Resident Evil stuff,
Yes.
for how long after Village came out for like 6 7 months,
Like six,
right?
7 months.
Except for the Welcome to Raccoon City,
Yes. Yep.
except that. But
Just that.
game wise, yeah, we had like a dry spell. That's when I started having my latest videos blow up. It was during that time. And I noticed the reason being, because I feel like this is where our styles differ. Your content will blow up because you're able to get through like a lot of content and you're fast with it. And when it's uptrends, like you get a higher high. You get what
Hmm.
I mean?
Right.
But for me, like, since mine's so slow that like, even though Resident Evil might be in a dry spell, somebody out like it could probably pick up something because mine's long format. So it's like kind of like, okay, well, there's nothing really to listen to. Then my video pops out and it's like, okay, it's like a documentary style now, right? So it's like something you want to listen to while maybe you're just driving. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly. And you're waiting for, some new
The
information to come
next
out.
something new.
Yeah, that's the one thing I want to, I want to try to do in the future is like have more of a longer form kind of reviews for games. Like
Yeah.
certain reviews, obviously, I like making shorter ones, but like for like more in depth reviews of going back to Resident Evil games and making it like a half hour or an hour long. Like that's
Yeah.
something I always wanted to do, but of course it just takes a lot of time. But
But yeah.
I know that it's something that I like. There's a couple. There's one video that I kind of have, and it's almost like a you mentioned documentary style. It's not so much documentary style, but it has to do with George A. Romero,
Okay.
and it has to do like what George A. Romero impact was on Resident Evil, and that's kind of it's a longer video, but I went to the Monroeville Mall. I walked around that mall. I saw his plaque. There's a lot of stuff I want to throw in there that it's a real. It has to do with Resident Evil, but it's just a personal video as well. That's also kind of connects to a director where it's like it really like he's the godfather of the zombies, right? So I'm working on a video, and I know it's going to be longer term, which is why it hasn't even really started the editing process or any kind of like pushing forward past the script, because I want to make it really good. But it's something I've been kind of dancing around with putting out, but because I had to focus on the RE4 stuff and all the current stuff. But I really want to do something like that where it's longer. It's going to be definitely an experiment. And I'm curious to see how people take it on this channel, but especially when it's about someone like George A. Romero, which some people don't know who that is, unfortunately. So some people might see that title, and then my analytics
they
might be like, "Fuck you," like
like they might not even click on it.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know. You know what I mean? So I might have to. Again, it's all in the mind of just trying to figure out how I can do that, or again, what's too long, what's too short, will it overstay its welcome? But again, this is just us kind of like expanding, trying different things. You know what I mean? And
yes.
and yeah,
And that's the thing that goes with the whole YouTube thing of like, the ever-changing landscape of YouTube and what it really wants you to put out there. You know what I mean? Though, yeah, it's changing. You still have to be congruent to what you want. But it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, I think that would be a great idea. The fact that you already mentioned, like right here in this interview, that you're all into like the whole filming thing. Maybe that's something you could even add into like covering Resident Evil, like why they shoot it in this kind of style. You get what I mean? Like why this take, like you know what I mean? Like why this angle? You know what I mean? Like the way I know that I'm reaching here, or like please correct me. I could sound like a complete idiot here. And when in terms of like filming skills, because I have no experience with that, but it kind of reminded me of that movie Nightcrawler. Yeah, I remember that movie.
Yes.
Jake Gyllenhaal,
yep.
right?
Where
And
he's
remember
recording the news
little by little.
Yeah.
And he's progressing little by little. He's getting better and better, right? And then he mentioned, it's funny. I mentioned this too. Like, you want to capture the frame of what you want to focus. You have your audience focus on, right? Good framing it'll keep their eyes steady, or keep them longer, or to whatever you want them to focus on. And it's true. And I noticed this with certain YouTubers too. And I'm a big financial geek. You know what I mean? Like, I'm into big finances, and I listen to like a guy named Graham Stephan. Like I know it's completely Resident Evil and then finances, but no. The only reason I mentioned this is because like his style video, and for years he was doing this. If you watch it, every 4 seconds, he would zoom in ever so slightly. A couple like it'll zoom in a little bit. And another 4 seconds, it will zoom back out. The reason for that, because it captures your eye. Because remember, our attention, is only lasts for a couple of seconds. Since it's that constant change, even though it's only a change of perspective, it's enough for you to keep your eye on the video.
It's snappy editing, right? That's
Exactly.
that's the one thing I liked about when like doing when I was messing. I mean, the whole past year on this show has really been more of an experiment with like switching to different angles and making the video more snappy, because the podcast used to just be on YouTube like a picture, and it would
Yeah.
like but now podcasts you have to have a video format with it or it's dead. It's like it's
Yeah.
almost like you need to have the audio. Yeah, people like the
Yeah.
audio, but they like the video. They like to see the camera angles change. They like to see, so like it's again, it's a very, like you said, catching that attention, catching that, just so you have them, because we all scroll to the next thing or close out or whatever. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's
Like
really just trying to capture that and learn it as it progresses with each little year that goes by, I guess, right?
because there's just so much content out there, and like you mentioned this before, that there's so much content being put in YouTube because the barrier to entry is so low now. Anybody with a cell phone could literally make content and upload it on YouTube, right? So for anybody to really kind of like, hone in and try to do something like this, right? You know what I mean? Like try to capture something, you really have to be really, really good. You have to really like long term, you have to do something great that people really like that keeps their attention, right? So I don't know if that makes sense or like, but I don't know what your take on that. Like, but just yeah, we've been doing this for a while, but it feels like we've learned so much more and we're still going to continue to learn more.
I'm happy people are adding to it. I think you have to be mindful of what they're doing, and you could see, not all the time though. You don't want it to influence you. See it, but a lot of people ask me all the time, do I watch Resident Evil content creators? And I don't. I only watch like a couple. Like I watch you, I watch Resident Evil Challenger, I watch a couple others, but I don't want to know what's going on entirely because I don't want to be influenced by it. If I know what's going on all the time, I'm going to be influenced by it. Like, if I'm watching 1,000 Resident Evil videos a month, that's going to rub off on my content. I don't want that. So the way I see it really isn't so much competition, but I guess more so of just like, colleagues. Like, all right, let's see what the colleagues are up to. All right, let's see what these other people are. But to consider them colleagues, they have to be legit. They can't just be sitting there making 4 or 5 minute clickbaity videos and clickbaity thumbnails and there's nothing else to offer. It's just clickbait.
Oh yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
offer yourself. You have to play video games. You have to play the games yourself and make these videos and really make them, again, like what you do. You bring your own experiences to that, and when you're writing it, you're putting all that effort into it. You're putting all these hours into the game and capturing footage, whatever it is. That it just can't be just like, again, that quantity over quality is not where you want. You want to be, you want to be able to have that balance of quality, even if you're not putting out stuff all the time. It's just like, I think it's I just think that, like, I look at all those other channels, not even just Resident Evil channels, but gaming channels on YouTube, as just like, yeah, there's competition in a way because there's so many of them and it can push you out easily because they can push you out just as much as fast as they bring you in here. But they can also, to stay relevant, like you said, to capture that, it's because people will capture what you're about. And I think people will see through those right away, and all those other channels will kind of fall through the cracks eventually, even though they might grow fast now. But the people that will keep the longevity and stay at it will be people like us that just like, we're in our own little community. And it's fine if other channels come along, that's fine. So yeah, I don't really look at it as like competition, but definitely in this wheelhouse, this community that we have, I think you have the people that are really trying, and then there's some people that, there's people that just like, they're still trying to find their way with what they're putting out and stuff like that. Some people will find it, some people won't. I have a lot of people that, like our style of videos that are here, that because, again, they come because they know that we're giving them not just like a little 3-minute, clickbait headline that you could have just, you could have read it on a website. You didn't really have to click this video kind of thing. That kind of thing.
Correct.
Always turns me off to those kind of content creators, not just RE, but just in general in the world of YouTube. Yeah, it's a very thing. So, yeah, I guess competition. I don't want to use that term like competition because it's like we're all just here to just enjoy everything that we have and just to kind of, I guess, just vibe out with each other with something that we just really like, and it just has like so much. That's so much joy, that brings a lot of joy to us, to our lives, to just everyone. I think there's a lot that goes into just how much fun we can have just talking about playing or playing these games,
Well, that's the thing. You said it right there. I mean, like, longevity wise, people will, like, eventually, yes, like some people might grow faster, but we mentioned this before, like yeah, like grow fast, but the thing is like, what about the fall? Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like what if you're not trending anymore? And that's
Yeah.
something that, I learned early on. Remember, I told you like when my Mr. X video blew up, right? And my channel started growing, and I was getting thousands. I remember I had 1,700 views in 1 hour in one of my videos.
Wow.
Subsequently, right? And then when RE2 remake came out, right after, like months after, I wasn't getting anywhere near the same amount of views. I could have stopped right there. I was like, man, am I doing something wrong? Like it's not, my thumbnails aren't there to be clickbaity. I could put like a picture of Mr. X with a red arrow and say why, you know what I mean, with an exclamation
Right.
mark. I'm like, oh, what is this? Like, and I could write down on the title like, this is why Resident Evil like has the best tyrant out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Stuff like that, right? But and it makes you wonder like, did I do something wrong? But in the longevity, and like you can see, look at it as like a marathon. Like those who are like have a passion for it will stay longer. They will have that core fan base. Like when I watch your live streams, or like I notice that it's the same people that's watching.
Yeah.
And Steve, these amount of people are there for you. You get what I mean? They're there for not just the channel, like Let's Talk Resident Evil. They're there for you, the
Yeah.
person. And that's something that like any channel that's really clickbaity, they can't have that because there's not that connection.
Exactly, where it's
that
only that, because
content
that's the
creator.
thing. Because at the end of the day, technically everything on YouTube needs to get your attention. So I want to be clear that when I say to the people listening or watching, like when I mean clickbaiting, I mean like it's only clickbaiting. There's not like, because I know like, because you have to have thumbnails that bring people in. You have to make it stand out. You have to have titles that make people want to click. But
Yes.
I guess there's a fine line between that and then like just clickbait, where it's just the flashy thumbnail and then like nothing else to really bring to it. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what we mean by that, because it's like you always kind of have to be somewhat of a clickbaiter on YouTube when you're uploading. You have to bring people in a little bit, but that term clickbait is kind of associated with more of a negative connotation
Negative.
as it
yeah.
is, because there's a lot of people that unfortunately abuse it and don't bring themselves to it. Like if we just clickbaited and just reiterated the title and reiterated the news that you already read 1,000 times, we're not bringing anything to it. But if we have a flashy thumbnail that gets you interested, and we give you something and you're like, you know what, that was worth my time, that's our job.
Yes.
That's it.
And
We don't want to piss you off,
Right there, exactly, right there. You're providing not a service. You're providing an entertainment value. You're providing a value. There you
Yes.
go. You're providing value that they want, right? Yes, you have to make your thumbnails where they want to click it. It has to correlate with the title.
Yes.
Right. For those where this is going back to content creation, right? Like for those who want to start a new YouTube channel, you have to have a thumbnail that works, right? That somebody remember, a lot of people are watching through the cell phone, something that they're scrolling through really quick. And they look at your thumbnail and like, okay, I want to click on this, but then you look at the title. It can't be just like for example, like if I was gonna make a new video, like I could say Mr. X analysis, explain, whatever. When you click on that, maybe if you're a big fan of Resident Evil, but if I'm just like if I'm just like, let's say I'm just a casual fan, I'm like, not really. Or I could put why this is why Mr. X was the most terrifying, blah blah blah. You're like, okay, let me click on that because
Yeah.
I want to know what made him so terrifying. But then, like you said, you have to add that value behind that thumbnail. You have to add that, because if not, then you're just like you said. Like I could have just read something off an article and be like, hey, like we're talking about RE4. I could have read that myself, right?
Exactly.
There has to be a value. 'Cause now, if you don't provide that in the long run, those articles aren't going to be there all the time. So if you don't have any articles to read, so what do you have to give?
That's
You know what I mean?
that's it, man. That's a really good point. And yeah, it's like, sure, your channel grows fast, but then what do you really have? Yeah, like then when you're on a show, or when you're on people are talking to you about it, or you're doing another video on another topic, and it's like people ask you about it, can you bring that knowledge to there? Do you have that other than
Yes.
just that, right? It's yeah, man, that's there's so many things that like I always look at and always kind of observe from afar, and then obviously years experiences, you just kind of take each experience, whether it's a failure, it's a success, and you just try to make that a part of your of your build. You know what I mean? You make it part of like what you are. You learn from everything, and you grow from it. Now, as we wrap this up, I want you to obviously, plug, your channels and all your socials. Where can everyone find you?
Well, primarily on YouTube. So, you can get on YouTube. Just look me up. It's Hey Deva. It's HEY space DEVUH. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I do have a really, really, really small Twitter account, but like I said, I primarily operate here on YouTube, so if you really want to, you can message me there. I mean, I've had people email me, because for business stuff,
Yeah.
like I've had that. You could try. Okay, I have to add this. Just recently I just had somebody complain about one of my videos recently, and I'm taking big consideration about it because they found something not very funny about my video. Like they took offense for it. But it was a game clip, right? An RE2 remake, and I was like, wait a minute. And then they proceeded to call me some, some homophobic slur, after that.
Right.
And I was like, why? What was it? So if you guys gonna message me on email, I'll take criticism, but hopefully you guys don't go on there, but just to dox me and
Right,
or
right.
any,
Yeah, no.
so
Yeah, man, no. It again, people. There's always going to be, the bad eggs out of the bunch, but there's always, there's always the good people that always,
oh yeah,
come back and stuff like that. Yeah, man. No, I really appreciate, you taking the time, and yeah, this has been fun, man. This is a great conversation.
yeah,
We can go all night, but obviously I'll love to have you back on. Maybe we can talk some more
definitely.
RE stuff as we get some more information, and I'll pick your brain about the Village DLC and what you thought about that and all that stuff.
Yeah, man, I'd love to be back on. Maybe like before like the RE Village DLC comes out.
Yeah.
And even post like what our thoughts are and all that. And I'll when I upload my video, I'll make sure to I'll plug your channel in, and
Absolutely.
kind of like, hey, go in, because it's a privilege for me to be on your channel,
Thanks, man.
It's an honor. So it's like, what can I do to help you out? That's pretty much it. Like, to me, I know we're gonna get going on this, but real quick, I don't see the community as a competition, and the way I look at it is like I could learn from a lot of different things, like from you, from what
Absolutely.
I'm learning from you,
Yeah.
just to have that rhythm and flow. And that's why I watch other people, because I need to see what works. If it doesn't work, then I have to do something different. Though it has to be congruent with you.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe I should, and I have, I should have opened up my horizons a little bit more personally. It's one thing I should probably do, but I'm always like, oh, I just don't want to, do this and this. But I understand, because you kind of have to still be in tune with our comrades, people in our circle, So you still want to be, you don't want to be completely out of tune. You want to be, at least you want to know, like, all right, this is kind of going on. All right, let me learn from this, pick from this, and try to see what I can do, bring it my own. Yeah, this has been great. I really hope that people
it's been fun, man.
Yeah, man, definitely. And I really hope people, learn something from it, and they, take away something from it, and hopefully they work on their channels, if they need to. And obviously everyone that's listening to the show or watching, you can obviously check out the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, download it for free. Don't forget to hit the like and comment down below, all that good stuff. And, we're going to have some more guests on the LTRE show, hopefully up and coming, so you guys can stay tuned for that. And that's it for this show, guys, and we will catch you in the next one. Take care.